Hi guys, welcome back to Getting the Balance. We're doing part 4 of Journey of Souls. And without further ado, just gonna check on the sound. Everything seems to be good. So, shall we get into this thing here? Okay, Chapter 12, Life Selection. There comes that time when the soul must once again leave the sanctuary of the spirit world for another trip to Earth. This decision is not an easy one. Souls must prepare to leave a world of total wisdom where they exist in a blissful state of freedom for the physical and mental demands of a human body. We have seen how tired souls can be when re entering the spirit world. Many don't want to think about returning to Earth again. This is especially true. Oh, you know what? Hold on a second. Let me share the screen. There you go. Sorry. This is especially true when we have not come close to our goals at the end of a physical life. And here we go. Once back in the spirit world, souls have misgivings about even temporarily leaving a world of self understanding, comradeship, and compassion to go to a planetary environment of uncertainty and fear brought about by aggressive, competing humans. Despite having family and friends on Earth, many incarnated souls feel lonely and anonymous among large, impersonal populations. I hope my cases show the opposite is true in the spirit world, where our souls are involved in the most intimate sharing on an everlasting basis. Our spiritual identity is known and appreciated by multitudes of other entities whose support is never ending. The rejuvenation of our energy and personal assessment of oneself takes longer for some souls than others, but eventually the soul is motivated to start the process of incarnation. While our spiritual environment is hard to leave, as souls we also remember the physical pleasures of life on earth with fondness and even nostalgia. When the wounds of the past are healed and we are again totally at one with ourselves, we feel the pull of having physical expression for our identity. Training sessions with our counselors and peer groups have provided a collaborative spiritual effort to prepare us for the next life. Our karma of past deeds towards humanity and our mistakes and achievements have all been evaluated with an eye towards the best course of future endeavors. The soul must now assimilate all this information and take purposeful action based on three primary decisions. Number one, I am ready. Am I ready for a new physical life? Number two, what specific lessons do I want to undertake to advance my learning and development? And number three, where should I go and who shall I be in my next life for the best opportunity to work on goals? Older souls incarnate less, regardless of the population demands of their assigned planets. When a world dies, those entities with unfinished business move on to another world which has a suitable life form for the kind of work they've been doing. Cycles of incarnation for the eternal soul seem to be regulated more by the internal desires of a particular soul than by the urgencies of host bodies evolving in a universe of planets. Nevertheless, Earth certainly has an increasing need for souls. Today we have over 5 billion people, which is way more than that now. Demographers vary in their calculations on how many uh, individuals have lived on Earth in the past 200,000 years. The average estimate is some 50 billion people. This figure, which I think is low, does not signify the number of visitations by different souls. Bear in mind, the same souls continue to reincarnate, and there are those who occupy more than one body at a time. There are reincarnationists who believe the number of people living on Earth today is close to the number of souls who have ever lived here. The frequency of incarnation on Earth by souls is uneven. Clearly has more need for souls today than in the past. Population estimates in 1 AD are around 200 million. By 1800, humans had quadrupled, and after only 170 more years, quadrupled again between 1970 and 2010. The world's population is expected to double once more. When I study the incarnation chronology of a client, I find there is usually a long span of hundreds, even thousands of years between their lives in the Paleolithic and nomadic cultures. With the introduction of agriculture and domesticated animals in the Neolithic age from around 7,000 to 5,000 years ago, my subjects report living more frequent lives. Still, their lives are often spaced as much as 500 years apart, with the rise of cities, trade, and more available food. I see the incarnation schedules of souls increasing with a growing population between 1000 and 1500 AD. My clients live in an average of once in 2 centuries. After 1700, this changes to once in a century. By the 1900s, living more than one life in a century is common among my cases. It has been argued these increases in soul incarnations only appear to be so because past life recall improves as people in hypnosis get closer to their current lives. This may be true to some extent, but if a life is important, it will be vividly remembered at any age and time. Without doubt, the enormous population increase on Earth is the basic cause for souls coming here more often. Is there a possibility that the inventory of souls slated for Earth could be strained by the surge in human reproduction? When I ask clients about the inventory available of souls, they tell me I should worry more about our planet dying from overpopulation than exhausting the reserve of souls. There is the conviction that new souls are always available to fill an expanding population requirements. If our planet is just one example among all other intelligent populations which exist in the universe, this inventory of souls must be truly astronomical. I have said souls do have the freedom to choose when and where and who they want to be in their physical lives. Certain souls spend less time in the spirit world in order to accelerate development, while others are very reluctant to leave. There is no question but what our guides exert great influence in this matter. Uh, just as we were given an intake interview in the orientation phase right after death, there are preparatory exit interviews by spiritual advisors to determine our readiness for rebirth. The case which follows illustrates a typical spiritual scene of a lower level soul. Case 24. Dr. N. When do you first realize that you might be returning to Earth? Subject. A soft voice comes into my mind and says, "It's about time, don't you think?" Dr. N. Who is this voice? Subject. My instructor. Some of us have to be given a push when they think we are ready again. Dr. N. Do you feel you are about ready to return to Earth? Subject. Yes, I think so. I've prepared for it, but my studies are going to take such a long time in Earth years before I'm done. It's kind of overwhelming. Dr. N. And do you think you will still be going to Earth when you near the end of your incarnations? Subject. Long pause. Maybe no. There is another world besides Earth, but with Earth people. Dr. N. What does this mean? Subject. Earth will have fewer people, less crowded. It's not clear to me. Dr. N. Where do you think you might be then? Subject. I'm getting the impression there is colonization someplace else. It's not clear to me. Note, the opposite of past life regression is post-life regression, which enables some subjects to see snatches of the future as incomplete scenes. For instance, some have told me Earth's population will be greatly reduced by the end of the 22nd century, partly due to adverse soil and atmospheric changes. They also see people living in odd-looking domed buildings. Details about the future are always rather limited due, I suspect, to built-in amnesia from karmic constraints. I'll have more to say about this with the next case. Dr. N. Let's go back to what you were saying about the instructors giving people a push to leave the spirit world. Would you prefer that they not do this? Subject. Oh, I'd like to stay, but the instructors don't want us hanging around here too long or we'll get into a rut. Dr. N. Could you insist on staying? Subject. Well, yes, the instructors don't force you to leave because they're so gentle. Laughs. But they have their ways, encouraging you when the time comes. Dr. N. Do you know of anyone who didn't want to be reborn again on Earth for any reason? Subject. Yes, my friend Mark. He said he had nothing to contribute anymore. He was sick of life on Earth and didn't want to go back. Dr. N. Had he lived many lives? Subject. No, not really, but he wasn't adjusting well in them. Dr. N. What did the teachers do with him? Was he allowed to stay in the spirit world? Subject reflectively. We choose to be reborn when it is decided we are ready. They don't force you to do anything. Mark has shown he did benefit others around him. Dr. N. What happened to Mark? Subject. After some more indoctrination, Mark realized he had been wrong about his abilities and finally he went back to Earth. Dr. N. Indoctrination? That makes me think of coercion. Subject disturbed by my remark. It's not that way at all. Mark was just discouraged and needed the confidence to keep trying. Note, Case 10 in Chapter 4 on displaced souls told us about how souls who had absorbed too much negative energy from Earth were, quote, remodeled, unquote. Case 22 also mentioned the need for restoration with some damaged souls. There are more extreme alterations in the basic reframing apparently used on Mark's tired soul. Dr. N. If the guides don't force you, could a soul absolutely refuse to be reborn? Subject. Yes. I guess you could say here and never be. I'm sorry. I guess you could stay here and never be reborn if you hated it that much. But the instructors told Mark that without life in a body, his studies would take longer. If you lose having direct experience, you miss a great deal. That's a good point. Dr. N. How about the reverse situation where a soul insists on returning to Earth immediately, say after an untimely death? Subject. I have seen that too. It's an impulsive reaction and does wear off after a while. The instructors get you to see that wanting to hurry back someplace as a new baby wouldn't change the circumstances of your death. It might be different if you could be reborn as an adult right away in the same situation. Eventually, everyone realizes they must rest and reflect. Dr. N. Well, give me your final thoughts about the prospect of living again. Subject. I'm excited about it. I would have no satisfaction without my physical lives. Dr. N. When you are ready for a new incarnation, what do you do? Subject. I go to a special place. Once a soul has decided to reincarnate again, the next stage in the return process is to be directed to the place of life selection. Souls consider when and where they want to go on earth before making a decision on who they will be in their new life. Because of this spiritual practice, I have divided life selection and our final choice of a body into two chapters for ease of understanding. The selection of time and place for incarnation and who we want to be are not completely separate decisions. However, we start by having the opportunity of viewing how we might fit into certain environments in future time segments. Then our attention is directed to people living in these places. I was a little distracted by this procedure until I realized the soul is largely influenced by cultural conditions and events, as well as by the participants in these events during a span of chronological time. That's interesting. I have come to believe that the spirit world as a whole is not functionally uniform. All spiritual regions are seen by traveling souls as having the same ethereal properties, but with different applications. As in an illustration, the space of orientation for incoming souls could be contrasted to the space of life selection for those who are leaving. Both involve life evaluations for souls in transit, which include scenes from Earth, but there the resemblance ends. Orientation spaces are said to be small, intimate conference areas designed to make newly arrived souls comfortable, but our mental attitude in this place can be somewhat defensive. This is because there is the feeling we might have done better with life. A guide is always directly interacting with us. On the other hand, when we enter the space of life selection, we are full of hope, promise, and lofty expectations. Here, souls are virtually alone with their guides out of sight, while evaluating new life options. This hectic simulating place is described as being much larger than the other spiritual study areas. Case 22 considered it a world unto itself where transcendent energy alters time to allow for planetary study. While some spiritual locales are difficult for my subject to describe, most love to talk about the place for life selection. And they use remarkably similar descriptions, I am told. It resembles a movie theater which allows souls to see themselves in the future, playing different roles in various settings. Before leaving, souls will have selected one scenario for themselves. Imagine being given a dress rehearsal before the actual performance of a new life. To tell us about it, I have picked a male subject who is well acquainted with the way his soul is assisted in making appropriate decisions. Excuse me. Take a quick sip before we start. Chapter 25. Dr. N, after you have made the decision you want to come back to Earth, what happens next? Well, when my trainer and I agree the time is right to accomplish things, I send out thoughts. Dr. N, go on. Subject, my messages are received by the coordinators. Dr. N, who are they? Doesn't your trainer guide handle all the arrangements for incarnation? Subject, not exactly. He talks to the coordinators who actually assist us in previewing our life possibilities at the ring. Dr. N, what is the ring? Subject, that's where I'm going. We call it the Ring of Destiny. Dr. N, is there just one place like it in the spirit world? Subject, pause. Oh, I think there must be many, but I don't see them. Dr. N, all right, let's go to the ring. Let's go to the ring together on the count of three. When I am finished with my count, you will have the capacity to remember all the details of this experience. Are you ready to go? Subject, yes, doctor. 1, 2, 3. Your soul is now moving towards the space of life selection. Explain what you see. Subject, long pause. I am floating towards the ring. It's circular, a monster bubble. Dr. N, keep going. What else can you tell me? Subject, there is a concentrated energy force. The light is so intense I'm being sucked inwards through a funnel. It's a little darker. Dr. N, are you afraid? Subject, no. I've been here before. After all, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited at what's in store for me. Dr. N, okay, as you float inside the ring, what are your first impressions? Subject, lowers voice. I am a little apprehensive, but the energy relaxes me. I have an awareness of concern for me, caring. I don't feel alone. My trainer's presence is with me too. Dr. N, continue to report everything. What do you see next? Subject, the ring is surrounded by banks of screens. I'm looking at them. Dr. N, screens on walls? Subject, they appear as walls themselves, but nothing is really solid. It's all elastic. The screens curve around me, moving. Dr. N, tell me more about the screens. Subject, they are blank, not reflecting anything yet. They shimmer as sheets of glass, mirrors. Dr. N, what happens next? Subject nervously, I feel a moment of quietness. It's always like this. Then It's as if someone flipped a switch on a projector in a panorama movie theater. The screens come alive with images, and there is color, action, full of light and sound. Dr. N, keep reporting to me. What is your soul in relation to the screens? Subject, I am hovering in the middle, watching the panorama of life all around me, places, people, jauntily. I know the city. Dr. N, what do you see? Subject, New York. Dr. N, did you ask to see New York City? Subject, we talked about my going back there. Absorbed, gee, it's changed a lot, changed. More buildings and cars. It's as noisy as ever. Dr. N, I'll come back to New York in a few minutes. Right now, I want you to tell me what is expected of you in the ring. Subject, I'm going to mentally operate the panel. Dr. N, what's that? Subject, a scanning device in front of the screens. I see it as a mass of lights and buttons, as if I'm in the cockpit of an airplane. Dr. N, and you see these mechanical objects in a spiritual setting? Subject, I know it sounds crazy, but this is what is coming through to me, so I can explain to you what I am doing. Dr. N, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Just tell me what you are supposed to do with the panel. Subject, I will help the controllers change the images on the screens by operating the scanner with my mind. Dr. N, oh, are you going to operate the projector as if you were working in a movie theater? Subject laughs. Not the projector, the scanner. Anyways, they aren't really movies. I am watching life actually going on in the streets of New York. My mind connects with the scanner to control the movements of the scenes I am watching. Dr. N, would you say that this device resembles a computer? Subject, sort of. It works on a tracking system which converts. Dr. N, converts what? Subjects, my commands are registered on this panel so I can track the action. Dr. N, position yourself at the panel, become the operator while continuing to explain everything to me. Subject, pause. I have assumed control. I see lines converging along various points in the series of scenes. I'm traveling through time now on the lines and watching the images on the screens change. Dr. N, and the scenes are constantly moving around you? Subject, yes. Then the points light up on the lines when I want the scene to stop. Note, lines of travel is a term we have heard before in other spiritual regions to describe soul transition, i.e. case 14. Continuing, Dr. N, why are you doing all this? Subject, I am scanning. The stops are major turning points on life's pathways, involving important decisions, possibilities, events which make it necessary to consider alternate choices in time. Now this is important too. So, realize, like I've said many times before, even before I read this book, people's lives have events. We all have these defining events in our lives, and understanding that they're important and that they're there for a specific reason, you know, is kind of important. And that's the whole also why this part possibilities is kind of separated, because how you live and your decisions will change and possibly change some of those events that may or may not happen to you. But even regardless of that, the ones that do happen to you are there for you to learn something from. So, continuing, Dr. N. So the lines mark the pathways through a series of events in time and space. Subject, yes, the track is controlled in the ring and transmitted to me. Dr. N, do you create the scenes of life while you track? Subject, oh no, I simply control their movement through time on the lines. Dr. N, what else can you tell me about the lines? Just lost myself. There it is. Subject, the lines of energy are roads with points of colored light as guideposts, which I can move forward, backwards, or stop. Dr. N, as if you're running a videotape with start, fast forward, stop, and rewind buttons. Subject laughs. That's the idea. Dr. N, all right, you are moving along the track, scanning scenes, and you decide to stop. Tell me what you do then. Subject, I suspend the scene on the screen so I can enter it. Dr. N, what? Are you saying you become part of the scene yourself? Subject, yes, now I have direct access to the action. Dr. N, in what way? Do you become a person in the scene, or does your soul hover overboard while people are moving around? Subject, both. I can experience what life is like with anyone in the scene, or just watch them from any vantage point. Dr. N, how can you leave the panel and go into a scene on Earth while still monitoring the action in the ring? Subject, I know you probably won't understand this, but part of me stays at the control so I can start up the scene again and stop at any time. Dr. N, perhaps I do understand. Can you divide your energy? Subject, yes, and I can send thoughts back to myself. Of course, the controllers are helping too as I go in and out of the scenes. Dr. N, so essentially you can move time forward, backward, and stop it while tracking? Subject, yes, in the ring. Dr. N, outside the ring, does time coexist for you in the spirit world, or is it progressive? Subject. It coexists here, but we can still see it we can still see it progress on Earth. Dr. N. It seems to me when souls are in the ring of destiny, they use time almost like a tool. Subject. As spirits, we do use time, subjectively. Things and events are moved around and become objects in time, but to us, time is uniform. Dr. N. The paradox I have with time travel is that what is going to happen has already happened, so you could meet your own soul in some human being as you come and go in life scenes from the future. Subject smiles enigmatically. When making contact, the soul in residence is put on hold for a moment. It's relatively short. We don't disturb life cycles when tracking through time. Dr. N. Well, if past, present, and future are not really separate while you are tracking, why do you stop scenes to consider choices when you can already see into the future? Subject. I'm afraid you don't realize the real purpose of time use by the controllers of the ring. Life is conditional. Progressive time is created to test us. We are not shown all the possible endings to a scene. Parts of lives are obscured to us. Dr. N. So time is used as a catalyst for learning by viewing lives when you can't see everything that is going to happen? Subject. Yes, to test our ability to find solutions. We gauge our abilities against the difficulty of the events. The ring sets up different experiments to choose from. On Earth, we will try to solve them. Dr. N. In the ring, you can look at a life on planets besides Earth. Subject. I can't because I'm programmed for tracking time on Earth. Dr. N. You're being able to jump through time from the screens around like a ball. Subject grins. Oh, it's stimulating, that's for sure, but we can't frolic around because there are serious decisions to be made for the next life. I'll have to accept the consequences for any mistakes in my choices if I'm not able to handle a life well. Dr. N. I still don't see how you can make any serious mistakes in your choices when you actually experience part of the life in which you plan to live. Subject. My choice of life environments are not unlimited. As I said, I probably won't be able to see all the scenes in one time segment. Because of that, or excuse me, because of what they don't show you, there is a risk attached to all body choices. Dr. N. If one's future density, or sorry, if one's future destiny is not fully preordained, as you say, why call this place the Ring of Destiny? Subject. Oh, there is destiny, all right. The life cycles are in place. It's just that there are so many alternatives which are unclear. And that is very indicative, you guys, of quantum physics and the strange paradox of that. Continuing, when I take my subjects to the spatial area of the life selection, they see a circle of past, present, and future times, such as the ring in this case. Sensing they are leaving sensing they are leaving spiritual now time within the circle, souls apparently rotate back and forth on resonating waves during their observational runs. All aspects of time are presented to them as recurring realities ebbing and flowing together. Because parallel realities are superimposed upon one another, they too can be seen as possibilities for physical lives, especially by the more experienced souls. I was puzzled why my subject did not fully see the future under these conditions as part of an all-knowing spiritual setting. In trying to sort this out, I finally came to the conclusion that the spirit world is designed to protect the interests of each soul. Generally, the people I work with are still incarnating younger souls. They may not see clearly. They may not clearly see significant events too far into the future because the further away these souls get from the present probabilities, the higher the incidence of possible alternative realities which cloud their images. Although the same properties hold true for time in the distant past, there is one exception. A soul's own past lives are more easily identified. This is because a single reality with a definite course of action was previously established to train this soul, and thus is firmly imprinted on his memory. In Chapter 5, Case 13 demonstrated how amnesia is imposed upon us when we come into a current life, so that past life experience will not inhibit self-discovery in the present. You see, self-discovery yet again. The same conditions hold true for souls examining future lives without knowing why. Most people believe their life has a plan. Of course, they are right. Although amnesia does not prevent having full conscious knowledge of this plan, the unconscious mind holds the key to spiritual memories of a general blueprint of each life. The vehicle of life selection provides a kind of time machine for souls where they see some alternative routes to the main road. Although these paths are not fully exposed to us as souls, we carry some of the roadmap to Earth. A client once said to me, quote, "Whenever I am confused about what to do in life, I quietly sit down and think about where I have been and compare this to where I might want to go in the future. The answer to the next step just comes to me from inside myself," unquote. Accepting what befalls us on the road of life as, quote, acts of God, unquote, does not mean our existence should be locked into spiritual determinism where we must submit to an unalterable fate. If everything was preordained, there would be no surprise or justice to our struggle. When adversity strikes, it is not intended that we sit back with a fatalistic attitude and not fight to improve the situation by making on site changes. During our lives, all of us will experience opportunities for change which involve risk. These occasions may come at inconvenient times. We may not act upon them, but the challenge is there for us. The purpose of reincarnation is the exercise of free will. Without this ability, we would be impotent creatures indeed. Thus, karmic destiny means we are not just caught up in the events over which we have no control. This also means we have karmic lessons and responsibilities. The law of cause and effect for our actions always exists, which is why this case did not want to make a mistake in choosing a life unsuited to him. But whatever happens to us in life, it is important we understand that our happiness or pain does not reflect either blessings or betrayal on the part of a God oversoul, our guides, or life selection coordinators. We are the masters of our destiny. As I conclude my conversation with Case 25, it may strike the reader that the musical goals of this individual towards his next life are rather self-serving. Certainly his desire to be admired musical talent has elements of personal compensation, which would be less evident in a more advanced soul. However, it will also be seen that this soul wants to give a lot of himself. Dr. N. Now, I want to talk more about the scenes you are seeing of New York City. Prior to your coming to the ring, were you given any preparations about selections based on geography? Subject: Oh, to some extent. My trainer and I talked about the fact that I had died young in New York in the last life. I wanted to go back to this dynamic city and study music. Dr. N. Did you also talk to your trainer about the other souls, your friends who might want to incarnate with you? Subject: Sure, that's part of it. Some of us begin staking out a new life by deciding what surroundings are best for all concerned. I made it known I wanted to start again in the same place where I was killed. My trainer and friends offered their suggestions. Note, the subject came to America as a Russian immigrant in his past life. He was killed in a railway construction accident in New York at age 22 in 1898. His rebirth in the same city occurred in 1937. Dr. N. What suggestions? Subject: We talked about my wanting to be a classical pianist. I had played an accordion for extra pickup change, banquets, weddings, that kind of thing. Dr. N. And this experience is motivating your interest in the piano? Subject: Yes. When making ice deliveries on the streets in New York, I would pass by the concert hall. It was my goal to someday study music and make a name for myself in the big city. I hardly got started before I died. Dr. N. Did you see your death as a young man in New York during your last visit to the ring? Subject sadly: Yes, and I accepted that as a condition of the life. It was a good life, just short. Now I want to go back with a better start and make a name for myself in music. Dr. N. Could you ask to go anywhere on Earth? Subject: It's fairly open. If we have our preferences, they are weighed against what's available. Dr. N. You mean against what bodies are available? Subject: Yes, in certain places. Dr. N. When you said you wanted a better start in music, I assume this is another reason you wanted to go back to New York. Subject: This city will give me the best opportunity to develop my desire to study the piano. I wanted a large cosmopolitan city with music schools. Dr. N. What's wrong with a city like Paris? Subject: I wasn't offered a body in Paris. Dr. N. I want to be clear on your selection options. When you start previewing life scenes in the ring, are you primarily looking at people or locations? Subject: We begin with locations. Dr. N. Okay, and so you were looking at the streets in New York City at the moment? Subject: Right. And it's wonderful because I'm doing more than looking. I'm floating around, smelling the food in the restaurants. I hear the honking cars. I'm following people walking past the shops on Fifth Avenue, getting the feel of the place again. Dr. N. At this point, have you actually entered the minds of the people walking along the streets? Subject: No, not yet. Dr. N. What do you do next? Subject: I go to other cities. Dr. N. Oh, I guess I just assume your body chose to be in New York City. Subject: I didn't tell you that. I also could go to Los Angeles, Buenos Aires, Oslo. Dr. N. I'm going to count to 5, and when I reach 5, you will scan these cities while we continue talking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Report what you are doing. Subject: I'm going to concert halls and music academies and watching the students practice. Dr. N. Do you just observe the general surroundings? while floating around with these students? Subject: I do more. I go inside the heads. I go inside the heads of some of them to see how they translate the music. Dr. N: Do you need to be in a special place like a ring to examine the mental processes of people? Subject: For past and future events, I do. Making contact with someone in the present on Earth can be done anywhere from the spirit world. Dr. N: Could you describe the way your soul makes contact with somebody? Subject: Pause. As a light brushstroke. Note: Souls are quite capable of sending and receiving messages from each other between spiritual and temporal worlds, as many of us have personally experienced. However, these temporary connections are made and broken quickly. The joining of a soul to a soulless baby for a lifetime is more difficult and will be described further in case 29. Dr. N: As you look at these prospective lives, what year is it on Earth? Subject hesitates. It's 1956 now, and most of my prospects are in their teens. I'll check them out before and after this year, as much as the ring will let me. Dr. N: So the ring gives you the opportunity to actually be various people who, in relative time on Earth, are not yet born? Subject: Uh-huh. To see if I would fit in well, to check out their talent and parents, that sort of thing. Decisively, I want New York. Dr. N: Do you think you have looked at the other cities carefully enough? Subject impatiently: Yes, I did that, but I don't want them. Dr. N: Wait a minute. What if you liked a music student in Oslo, but you wanted to live in New York City? Subject laughs. As a matter of fact, there is a promising girl in Los Angeles, but I still want New York. Dr. N: All right, move forward as your time in the ring draws to a close. Give me the details of your probable life selection. Subject: I'm going to New York to be a musician. I'm still trying to make up my mind between a couple of people, but I think I will choose, stops to laugh, a dumpy kid with a lot of talent. His body won't have the stamina of my last one, but I'll have the advantage of parents with some money who will encourage me to practice, practice, practice. Dr. N: Money is important? Subject: I know I sound grasping, selfish, but there was no money in my last life. If I wanted to express the beauty of music and give pleasure to myself and others, I need proper training and supportive parents. Otherwise, I'd get sidetracked. I know myself. Dr. N: If you didn't like any of the options presented to you in the ring, could you ask for more places and people to look at? Subject: It isn't necessary, at least for me. I'm offered enough. Dr. N: Let me be more blunt. If you were opposed to select a life from only the selections shown you in the ring, how do you know the coordinators aren't stacking the deck against you? Maybe they are programming you to make certain choices? Subject: Pause. I don't think so, considering all the times I have come to the ring. We don't go unless our minds are made up as to the type of life we want to live. And I've always had interesting choices based upon my own ideas. Dr. N: Okay. After you are completely finished with reviewing lives in the ring, what happens then? The subject: The controllers come into my mind to see if I'm satisfied with what I have been shown. Dr. N: Are they always the same entities? Subject: I think so, as far back as I can remember. Dr. N: Do they pressure you to make a decision before leaving the ring? Subject: Not at all. I float out and go back to talk to my companions before making up my mind. Of course, theaters such as The Ring are not limited to viewing our planet. I have shown how some souls who come to Earth enjoy incarnating on other worlds as well. In Chapter 10, I explained how the space of transformation within the spirit world allows souls to experiment with all sorts of shapes and forms for enlightenment and short-term recreation. However, for purposes of actual incarnation into our universe and other dimensions, my subjects tell me there are space-time tunnels or channels available near their group centers. Later, case 29 will describe what it feels like to go through one of them at rebirth. People say these portals are symbolized by a line of huge archways for passage similar to a large train station. One woman put it this way, quote, "We see these openings as lighter or darker voids of space. To me, the lighter tunnels denote more interactive communities of beings. The darker fields lead to low-density mental colonies where I'm going to be alone a lot more," unquote. When I asked her for an example of the latter, she said, quote, "On the world of Arnth, we are as balls of cotton candy moving on waves of gas where nothing is solid. The swirling around each other is very orgasmic," unquote. Another subject describing his entry into a lighter opening said, quote, "Sometimes between human incarnations, I go with groups of souls to the fire world of Gesta. In this volcanic atmosphere, we can experience the physical and emotional simulation of becoming intelligent molecules of flame." Interesting. Now I know why I love to be in temperatures of over 100 degrees on Earth, unquote. A soul's physical anchorage is important. Case 25 told us his choice of location was confined to 4 cities. The number of scenes souls preview before a new life is, of course, different for each visit. Individual life offerings are selective, which indicates to me that other spiritual entities have been actively working on our behalf to set up location scenes before we arrive. The number of specialists, spirits who assist souls in the space of life selection never seem to be large. They appear as rather vague apparitions to my subjects, although most believe members of their council of elders and personal guides are involved. Early in human history, when the world was underpopulated, my clients recall lives where they were always born in sparse human settlements. In time, with the rise of villages and then larger centers of ancient civilizations, my cases reported returning to the same areas. Life selections were geographically scattered again by the great immigrations of people colonizing new lands, particularly in the last 400 years. The century of overpopulation, more souls are choosing to live in places where they have seen before. Does this tendency today mean souls want to return to the same countries because of race? Souls are not inclined towards life selections based on ethnicity or nationalism. These products of human separatism are taught in childhood. Excuse me. Aside from the comfortable familiarity of a culture in a soul's choice, which is different from racial bias, we must also factor in the affinity many spirits have for deserts, mountains, or the sea. Souls may also have a preference for rural or urban living. Are souls drawn back to the same geographic area because they want new life with the same family they had in their past life? The tradition among certain cultures, as Native Americans, is that souls choose to stay within family bloodlines. A dying man is expected to come back as his own unborn grandchild. In my practice, I rarely see souls repeating the same genetic choices in past lives because this would inhibit growth and opportunity. Excuse me. Sorry, I had a little frog in my throat. Oh, excuse me. Okay, yeah. So once in a while I hear about a soul returning to the body of a relative in a former life under unusual karmic circumstances. For example, if a brother and sister had a close affinity for each other and one were to die suddenly while still young, the soul of the dead sibling might want to return in the surviving sibling's child to restore this broken life connection to finish an important task. What is even more common, in my experience, are the souls of young children who die soon after birth and then return to the same parents as the soul of their next baby. How interesting. These plans are all made in advance by the souls participating in tragic family events. They involve a maze of karmic issues. Not long ago, I had a case where my client had died from a birth defect early in his last life. I asked, quote, "What was the purpose of your life ending when you were only a few days old?" Unquote. He replied, quote, "The lesson was for my parents, not me. And that's why I elected to come back for them as a filler," unquote. This is what I mean, yeah, guys. Like, understanding the trauma and the crazy events in life, be they good or bad or whatever else, you know. Is it all just random? Is it all this mistake? You know, is there something to learn in all of these things? It's something to think about. In this case, the parents had abused and finally caused the death of another child when they were together in an earlier life. Although they were a loving couple in the last life of my client, these parents have evidently needed to experience the grief of having a child they desperately wanted taken away from them. Experiencing the anguish from this terrible loss gave the souls of these parents a deeper insight into the effects of severing a blood bond. I will have an example of this theme in case 27. Spirits do not routinely see their deaths in future lives. If souls choose a life where their death will be premature, they often see it in the place of life selection. I have found that souls essentially volunteer in advance for bodies who will have sudden fatal illnesses, are to be killed by someone, or come to an abrupt end of life with so many others from a catastrophic event. Souls who become involved in these tragedies are not caught in the wrong place at the wrong time with capricious God looking the other way. Every soul has a motive for the events in which it chooses to participate. One client told me his last life was planned in advance to end at 7 years of age as an American Indian boy. He said, quote, "I was looking for a short burst lesson in humanity, and this life as a mistreated, starving half-breed was enough," unquote. Another, more graphic example of a soul volunteering for terrible assignment was that of one of my subjects who elected in her last life to join with three others of her soul group the bodies of Jewish women taken from Munich to the death camp at Dachau in 1941. All were assigned to the same barracks, who also prearranged, where my client died in 1943 at age 18, comforting the children and trying to help them survive. Her mission was accomplished with courage. While events, race, culture, and geographic locations often appear to come first in the selection process, they are not the most significant choices for the soul's next life. Aside from all other considerations, incarnations come down to souls making the all-important decision of a specific body, and what can be learned by utilizing the brain of a certain human being. The next chapter is devoted to an analysis of why souls choose their bodies for various biological and psychological reasons. Okay, I gotta take a quick 5-minute break here, guys. I apologize for that, but it will be short. I gotta throw some wood in the stove and feed my cat real quick because she will not stop bothering me. So I will be right back. Okay, let me get settled here. All right. Sorry about the delay, guys. And take the break screen off. There we go. Okay. Chapter 13, choosing a new body. Make sure the sound's still good. Looks like everything's good. Yes. All right. Good. Okay. So, choosing a new body. In the place of life selection, our souls preview the lifespan of more than one human being within the same time cycle. When we leave this area, most souls are inclined towards one leading candidate presented to us for soul occupation. However, our spiritual advisors give us ample opportunity to reflect upon all we have seen in the future before making a final decision. This chapter is devoted to the many elements which go into that decision. Our deliberations over body alternatives actually begin before we go into the place of life selection. Souls do this in order to adequately prepare themselves for viewing certain people in different cultural settings on Earth. I sense that those souls who set up the screening room know in advance what to show us because of these thoughts in our minds. Great care must be taken in choosing just the right body to serve us in the life to come. As I have said, guides and peer groups members are part of this evaluation process prior to and after we visit the place of life selection. When listening to my subjects describe all the preparations which go into picking a new physical body, I am constantly reminded of the fluidity of spiritual time. Our teachers are relative future time in what? Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. Our teachers use relative future time in the place of life selection to allow souls to measure human usefulness for working on unfinished lesson plans. Blueprints for the next life vary in the degree of difficulty the soul mind sets for itself. We have just come off an easy life. If we have just come off an easy life, making little interpersonal progress, our soul might want to choose a person in the next time cycle who will face heartache and perhaps tragedy. It is not out of the ordinary for me to see someone who has skated through an unchallenging life, overloading themselves with turmoil in the next one to catch up with their learning goals. The soul mind is far from infallible as it works in conjunction with the biological brain. Regardless of our soul level, being human means we will all make mistakes and have the necessities of engaging in mid-course corrections during our lives. This will be true with any body we select. That's a very good point. Before taking up the more complex mental factors in a soul's decision to join the brain of a human body, I will begin with the physical aspects of the body choice. Despite the fact that our souls know in advance what they are going to look like, a national survey in the United States indicates 90% of both males and females were dissatisfied with their physical characteristics of their bodies. This is the power of conscious amnesia. Much unhappiness is created by society stereotyping an ideal appearance. Yet this too is part of a soul's lesson plan. Indeed, right? Isn't it all? How many times have we all looked in the mirror and said, quote, is this the real me? Why do I appear this way? Why am I in a body where I belong, quote unquote? These questions are especially poignant when the type of body we have prevents us from doing those things which we ought to be able to do in life. I've had a number of clients who came to me convinced their bodies prevented them from achieving satisfying lives. Many handicapped people think if it were not for a genetic mistake or being a victim of an accidental injury which damaged their body, their lives would be more fulfilled. As heartless as this may sound, my cases show few real accidents involving body damage which don't fall under the free will of souls. As souls, we choose our bodies for a reason. Living in a damaged body does not necessarily have to involve a karmic debt. We are paying off because of past life responsibility for an injury to somebody else. As my next case will demonstrate, when a soul is inside a damaged body, this choice can involve a learning path to another type of lesson. It is difficult to tell a newly injured person trying to cope with physical disablement that he or she has an opportunity to advance at a faster rate than those of us with healthy bodies and minds. This knowledge must come through self-discovery, like always. The case histories of my clients convince me that the effort necessary to overcome a body impediment does accelerate advancement. Those of us whom society deems less than perfect suffer discrimination, which makes the burden even heavier. Overcoming the obstacles of physical ailment and hurt makes us stronger for the ordeal. Our bodies are an important part of the trial we set for ourselves in life. The freedom of choice we have with these bodies is based far more on psychological elements than from the estimated 100,000 genes inherited by each human being. It's way more than that. However, I want to show in the opening case of this chapter why souls want certain bodies based largely on physical reasons without heavy psychological implications. The case exhibits the planning involved. Okay. The case exhibits the planning involved in the decision of a soul to be in contrasting physical bodies in different lives. After this case, we will examine why souls choose their bodies for other reasons. Case 26 was a tall, well-proportioned woman who enjoyed participating in sports despite being bothered all her life with recurring leg pains. During her preliminary interview, I learned the pain was a dull ache in both legs, about midway down the thigh bones. Over a period of years, she had been to a number of doctors who could find no medical evidence of anything wrong with her legs. Clearly, she was worn down and willing to try anything for relief. When I heard the doctors had concluded her discomfort was probably psychosomatic, I suspected the origin of this woman's pain might lie in a past life. Before going to the source of her problem, I decided to take my client through a couple of past lives to ascertain her motivations for body choices. When I asked her to tell me about a life in which she was the happiest with a human body, she told me of a body. With a human body, she told of being in the body of a Viking called Leth around 800 AD. She said Leth was, quote, a child of nature, unquote, who traveled by the Baltic Sea route into western Russia. Leth was described as wearing a long, fur-lined coat with soft, form-fitting animal skin pants, with roped-up boots and a cap wrapped with metal. He carried an axe and a heavy, broad-bladed sword which he wielded easily in battle. My subject was intrigued by the picture in her mind of again being inside the magnificently proportioned warrior with, quote, dirty strands of reddish blonde hair spilling over my shoulders, unquote. Standing well over 6 feet tall, he must have been a giant of his time, with enormous strength, a huge chest, and powerful limbs. A man of great endurance, Leth navigated with other Norsemen over long distances, sailing up rivers and hiking through thick virgin forests, pillaging settlements along the way. Leth was killed during a raid while looting a village. Case 26. Dr. N. What was the most important to you about this life you have just recalled as Leth the Viking? Subject. To experience that magnificent body and feel of raw physical power. I have never had another body like that one all my existences on earth. I was fearless because my body did not react to pain, even when wounded. In every respect, it was flawless. I never got sick. Okay. Thanks for the heads up, Phil. I will. Let's see here. Dr. N, was Leth ever mentally troubled by anything? Was there any emotional sensitivity for you in this life? Subject burst out laughing. Are you kidding? Never. I lived only for each day. My concerns were not getting enough fighting, plunder, food, drink, and sex. All my feelings were channeled into physical pursuits. What a body. Dr. N, all right, let's analyze your decision to choose this great body in advance of Leth's life. At the time you made your choice in the spirit world, did you request this body of good genetic stock, or did your guide simply make the selection for you? Subject. Counselors don't do that. Dr. N. Then explain to me how this body came to be chosen by you. Subject. I wanted one of the best physical specimens on Earth at the time, and Leth was offered to me as a possibility. Dr. N. You had only one choice? Subject. No, I had two choices of people living in the same time, or in this time. Dr. N. What if you didn't like any of the body choices presented to you for your occupation in that time segment? Subject thoughtfully. The alternatives of my choices always seem to match what I want to experience in my lives. Dr. N. Do you have the sense the counselors know in advance which body selections are exactly right for you, or are they so harried that it's an indiscriminate grab bag of body choices? Subject. Nothing here is careless. The counselors arrange everything. Pardon me, I need to take a quick sip. Dr. N. I have wondered if the counselors might get mixed up once in a while. With all the new babies born, could they ever assign two souls to one baby or leave a baby without a soul for a while? Subject laughing. We aren't in an assembly line. I told you they know what they are doing. They don't make mistakes like that. Dr. N. I believe you. Now, as to your choices, I'm curious if two bodies were sufficient for your examination in the place of life selection. Subject. We don't need a lot of choices for lives once the counselors get their heads together about our desires. I already had some idea of the right body, size, and shape, and the sex I wanted before being exposed to my choices. Dr. N. What was the body choice you rejected in favor of Leth? Subject pause. That of a soldier from Rome, also with the strong body I wanted in that lifetime. Dr. N. What was wrong with being an Italian soldier? Subject. I didn't want control over me by the state. Subject shakes head from side to side. Too restrictive. I don't blame him. Dr. N. As I remember, by the 9th century, much of Europe had fallen under the authority of Charlemagne's Holy Roman Empire. That's Dr. N. Subject. That was the trouble with the soldier's life. As a Viking, I answered to nobody. I was free. I could move around with my band of invaders in the wilderness without any governmental control. Dr. N. Then freedom was also an issue in your choice? Subject: absolutely. The freedom of movement, the fury of battle, the use of my strength in uninhibited action. Life at sea and in the forest was robust and constant. I know the life was cruel, too, but it was a brutal time. I was no better or worse than the rest. Dr. N. But what about other considerations, such as personality? Subject: nothing bothered me as long as I was able to physically express myself to the fullest. Dr. N. Did you have a mate, children? Subject shrugs. Too restrictive. I was on the move. I possessed many women, some willing, others not, and this pleasure added to my expression of physical power. I didn't want to be tied down in any way. Dr. N. So the body of Leth was your preference as pure physical extension of sensual feeling? Subject: yes. I wanted to experience all body senses to the fullest, nothing more. I felt my subject was now ready to go to work on her current problem. After bringing her out of superconscious to a subconscious state, I asked her to go directly to a life which may have involved leg pain. Almost at once, the woman dropped into her most recent past life and became a 6-year-old girl named Ashley living in New England in the year 1871. Ashley was riding in a fully loaded horse-drawn carriage when suddenly she opened the door and tumbled out under the vehicle. When she hit the cobblestone streets, one of the heavy rear carriage wheels rolled over her legs at the same moment above both knees, crushing the bones. My subject re-experienced a sharp pain in her legs while describing the fall. Despite efforts from local physicians and the prolonged use of wood splints, Ashley's leg bones did not heal properly. She was never able to stand or walk again, and poor circulation caused repeated swelling in her legs for the rest of her rather short life. Ashley died in 1912 after a productive period of years as a writer and a tutor of disadvantaged children. When the narration of Ashley's life ended, I returned my subject to the spirit world. Dr. N. In your history of body choices, why did you wait 1,000 years between being a physically strong man and a crippled woman? Subject: well, of course, I developed a better sense of who I was during the lives in between. I chose to be crippled to gain intellectual concentration. Dr. N. You chose a broken body for this? Subject: yes. You see, being unable to walk made me read and study more. I developed my mind and listened to my mind. I learned to communicate well and write with skill because I wasn't distracted. I was always in bed. Dr. N. Was any characteristic about your soul particularly evident in both Ashley and Leth the Viking? Subject: that part of me which craves fiery expression was in both bodies. Dr. N. I wanted you to go. I want you to go to the moment you were in the process of choosing the life of Ashley. Tell me how you decided on this particular damaged body. Subject: I picked a family in a well-established, settled part of America. I wanted a place with libraries and to be taken care of by loving parents so I could devote myself to scholarship. I constantly wrote to many unhappy people and became a good teacher. Dr. N. As Ashley, what did you do for this loving family who took care of you? Subject: as always, it always works two ways, benefits and liabilities. I chose this family because they needed the intensity of love with someone totally dependent upon them all their lives. We were very close as a family because they were lonely before I was born. I came late as their only child. They wanted a daughter who would not marry and leave them to be lonely again. Dr. N. So it was a trade-off? Subject: most definitely. Dr. N. Then let's track this decision further back to the place of life selection. When your soul first saw Ashley's life, did you see the details of your carriage accident then? Subject: of course, but it wasn't an accident. It was supposed to happen. Dr. N. Once you came to Earth, who was responsible for the fall? Was it your soul mind or Ashley's biological mind? Subject: we work in unison. She was going to be fooling with the carriage door handle, and I capitalized on that. Dr. N. Tell me what was going on through your soul mind in the life selection room when you saw the scene of Ashley falling and being injured. Subject: I thought about how this crippled body could be put to good use. I had some other choices for body injuries, but I preferred this one because I didn't want to have the capability for much movement. Dr. N. I want to pursue the issue of causality here. Would Ashley have fallen anyways if she had a soul other than your own? Subject defensively: we were right for each other. Dr. N. That doesn't answer my question. Subject long pause. There are forces beyond my knowledge as a spirit. When I saw Ashley for the first time, I was able to see her without me. Healthy, older, another life possibility. Dr. N. Now we are getting somewhere. Are you saying if Ashley had begun her life with another soul entity, she might not have fallen at all? Subject: yes, that's a possibility. One of many. She could also have been less severely injured with the ability to walk on crutches. Dr. N. Well, did you see a physically healthy Ashley living happily without your soul? Subject: I saw a grown woman, normal legs, unhappiness with a man, frustration at being trapped in an unrewarding life, sorrowful parents, but easier. Voice becomes more firm. No, that course would not have worked well for either of us. I was the best soul for her. Dr. N: Were you the prime mover of the fall once you elected to become Ashley's soul? Subject: It was both of us. We were one at that moment. She was being naughty, bouncing around in the carriage, playing with the door handle when her mother said she must stop. Then I was ready, and she was ready. Dr. N: Now, just how rigid was your destiny? Once you were Ashley's soul, was there any way you could have backed out of this entire incident in the carriage? Subject: Pause. I can tell you I had a flash just before I fell. I could have pulled back and not fallen out. A voice inside my mind said, quote, It's an opportunity. Don't wait any longer. Take the fall. This is what you wanted. It's the best course of action, unquote. Dr. N: Was the particular moment important? Subject: I didn't want Ashley to get too much older. Dr. N: But the pain and suffering this child went through. Subject: It was horrible. The agony of those first 5 weeks was beyond belief. I almost died, but I learned from enduring it all, and now I see the memories of Left's capacity for managing pain helped me. Dr. N: Did your inner mind have any regrets during those moments when the pain was most severe? Subject: As I slipped in and out of consciousness during the worst of the ordeal, my mind began again in power, overriding my damaged body. I started to better control the pain, lying in bed, the doctors helpless. The skills I developed in managing pain were later used to concentrate on my studies, and my counselor was helping me, too, in subtle ways. Dr. N: So you gained a lot in this life by being unable to walk. Subject: Yes, I became a listener and thinker. I correspond with many people and learned to write with inspiration. I gained teaching ability with the young and felt guided by an internal power. Dr. N: Was your counselor proud of your accomplishments after you returned to the spirit world? Subject: Very, although I was told I had become a little too indulged and pampered. Laughs. That's an okay trade-off. Dr. N: How does your experience with the strong body of Leth and the weak one of Ashley help you today, or is this of no consequence? Subject: I benefit every day by my appreciation of the necessity of a union between mind and body to learn lessons. That is a very good lesson to learn for all people. During my client's reliving of the street scene which broke her legs, I initiated desensitizing measures at the close of our session together. I then deprogrammed her generational memory of leg pain entirely. This woman later notified me she had no further pain and regularly enjoys playing tennis. The two past lives I have presented in this case were largely devoted to physical choices for soul actualizations in two quite different environments. Souls search for self-expression by developing different aspects of their character. Regardless of what physical or mental tools are used through the use of many bodies, the laws of karma will prevail. If the soul chooses one extreme, somewhere down the line this will be counterbalanced by an opposite choice to even out the development. The physical lives of Leth and Ashley are examples of karmic compensation. The Hindus believe a rich man sooner or later must become a beggar for his soul to develop adequately. By surviving different challenges, our soul identity is strengthened. The word strength should not be misunderstood. My subjects say the real lessons of life are learned by recognizing and coming to terms with being human. Even as victims, we are beneficiaries because it is how we stand up to failure and duress which really marks our progress in life. Sometimes one of the most important lessons is to learn to just let go of the past. Yes, bravo. While souls carefully consider the physical attributes of an earth body in a variety of cultural settings, they give much more attention to the psychological aspects of human life. This decision is the most vital part of the entire selection process for the soul. Before entering the place of life selection, it is to a soul's advantage to ponder the factors of heredity and environment which affect how a biological life form will function. I have heard that a soul's spiritual energy has a fluctuating influence on whether the temperament of its human host will be extroverted or introverted, rationalistic or idealistic, emotionally or analytically dominated. Because of such variables, souls need to reflect in advance on types of bodies which serve them best in the life to come. From what I can gather, a soul's thoughts about certain human behavior preferences for themselves in the next life are known by guides, and those masters charged with operating the life selection stations.
It appears to me some souls take this responsibility more seriously than others. Yet, a soul in the pre-life selection phase can reflect only so much on how they would fit into a specific body. When souls are called to the place of life selection, the guesswork is over. Now they must match their spiritual identity against a mortal being. Why one soul joined for psychological reasons with two human beings thousands of years apart is the basis of my next case. Case 27 is a Texas businessman who owns a large, successful clothing firm. During a vacation in California, Steve came to see me on the advice of a friend. As I took his history, I noticed he was tense and hypervigilant. While his fingers toyed with a keychain, Steve's eyes darted anxiously around my office. I asked if he was nervous or afraid of hypnosis as a procedure, and he replied, quote, "No, I'm more afraid of what you will uncover," unquote. This client told me his employees were demanding and disloyal, and the multitude of personnel complaints had become intolerable. His solution had been to increase discipline and fire people. I learned that he had two failed marriages and was a binge alcoholic. Oh, here we go. He said he had already recently tried a recovery program but quit because, quote, they were getting too critical of me, unquote. That's a little foreshadowing here, right? As we talked further, Steve explained that his mother disappeared after leaving him on the steps of a church in Texas within a week of his birth. After a few lonely and unhappy years in an orphanage, an older couple adopted him. He added these people were stern disciplinarians who seemed to disapprove of him all the time. Leaving home in his teens, Steve had many scrapes with the law and once attempted suicide. I found this client's personality to be overly assertive and untrusting of authority. His finger was rooted in feeling, I'm sorry, his anger was rooted in feelings of isolation and abandonment issues. Steve said he felt like he was losing control over his life and was trying it was willing to try anything, quote, to find the real me, unquote. It's the universal issue, right? I agreed to short-term exploration of his unconscious mind if he would consider seeing a therapist later in his own town for sustained counseling. In this case, as this case unfolds, we will see how Steve's soul maintains its identity while responding to physical life in a human body. The intensity of this association is increased in his hypnosis when my subjects discuss their motives for body selection. One reason why I have used this case is to expose a different barrier to discovering our identity, that of childhood trauma. Souls who unite with people that develop early personality disorders deliberately set themselves up for a difficult life. Before taking my client into the spirit world to learn why his soul chose this life, it was necessary to relive his early childhood memories. In the short excerpts which begin this case, this subject will see his real mother again. It is one of the most poignant scenes I have ever facilitated. And I need to take a quick sip. Case 27. Dr. N. You are now a baby in the first week of life, and your mother is seeing you for the last time. It doesn't matter that you are a baby because your inner adult mind knows everything that is going on. Describe to me exactly what transpires. Subject. Subject starts to shake. I'm in a basket. There is a faded blue blanket around me. I'm being set down on some steps. It's cold. Dr. N. Where are these steps? Subject. In front of a church in Texas. Dr. N. Who is setting you down on the church steps? Subject. The shaking increases. My mother. She's bending down over me, saying goodbye. Begins to cry. Or he begins to cry. Dr. N. What can you tell me about your mother's reason for leaving you? Subject. She is young, not married to my father. He is already married. She is crying. I can feel her tears falling on my face. Dr. N. Look up at her. What else do you see? Subject. Chokes. Flowing back black hair, beautiful. I reach up and touch her mouth. She kisses me, soft, gentle. She's having a terribly hard time leaving me here. Dr. N. Does she say anything to you before leaving? Subject. Subject can now hardly talk. Quote, I must leave you for your own good. I have no money to take care of you. My parents won't help us. I love you. I will always love you and hold you in my heart forever. Unquote. Dr. N. What happens then? Subject. She takes hold of a heavy door knocker. It has an animal on it and bangs on the door. We hear footsteps coming. Now she is gone. Dr. N. What do your inner thoughts tell you about all you've seen? Subject. Almost overcome by emotion. Oh, she wanted me after all. I didn't want to leave. She wanted me after all. didn't want to leave me. She loved me. Dr. N. I place my hand on my subject's forehead and begin a series of post-hypnotic suggestions with end with the following instructions. Steve, you will be able to recall this subconscious memory in your conscious mind. You will retain this picture of your mother for the rest of your life. You now know how she truly felt about you and that her energy is still with you. Is that clear? Subject, yes, it is. Dr. N. Now move forward in time and tell me how you feel about your foster parents. Subject, never satisfied with me, made me feel guilty about everything, controlling and judging me. Subject's face is dripping wet with tears and perspiration. Don't know who I am supposed to be. I'm not real. Dr. N. I raise my voice. Tell me what is unreal about you. A subject pretending, and then he stops. Dr. N. Keep going. Subject, I'm not really in control. Constant anger, mistreating people to get even, hopelessness. Note, after additional conditioning, I will now take my subject back and forth between the subconscious and superconscious mind. Dr. N. All right, Steve. Now let's go back to the time before your birth into this life. Tell me if you have ever lived in another life with the soul of your birth mother. Subject, long pause. Yes, I have. Dr. N. Was there ever a particular life you lived with this soul on earth which involved any sort of physical or emotional pain between the two of you? Subject. After a moment, subject's hands grips the arm of his chair. Oh, damn. That's it. Of course. It's her. Dr. N. Try to relax and don't go too fast for me. I want you to enter the life you see in your mind at the most crucial point in your relationship with this soul on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Subject. A deep sigh. Oh my, it's the same person. A different body, but she was my mother then, too. Dr. N. Stay focused on the earth scene. Is it day or night? Subject. Pause. Broad daylight, hot sun, and sand. Dr. N. Describe what is happening under the hot sun in the sand. Subject. Haltingly. I'm standing in front of my temple before a large crowd. My guards are in back of me. Excuse me. Dr. N. What is your name? Subject. Harum. Dr. N. What are you wearing, Harum? Subject. A long white robe and sandals. I have a staff in my hand with gold snakes on it as a symbol of my authority. Dr. N. What is your authority, Harum? Subject. Proudly, I am a high priest. Note, further inquiries reveal this man was a tribal leader who was located in the Arabian Peninsula close to the Red Sea around 2000 BC. In pre-classical times, this area was known as the Kingdom of Sheba, or Saba. I also learned the temple was a large oval structure of mud bricks, stone dedicated to a moon god. Okay, I just want to stop real quick, you guys. So Sheba, Saba, this is a language situation here, which is going to connect with many future videos coming up. But the Kingdom of Sheba is actually it's a transliteration of Shiva from the god from India, and the god from India has a crescent moon on his head, and the oval structure is going to be done very similarly, like a linga. Just wanted to point that out. And the fact that he has a white robe and a staff with 2 intertwining snakes is yet again another clue of that particular religion. So, continuing, but fascinating enough, this is in the Kingdom of Sheba, right, which is in the Arabian Peninsula, not in India. I think we're going to have to take a little note of this, maybe, and come back to it in another video. What are you doing in front of your temple? I am on the steps judging a woman. She is my mother. She is kneeling down in front of me. There is a look of pity and fear in her eyes, and she looks up at me. Dr. N. How can her eyes show both pity and fear at once? Subject. There is pity in her eyes because of the power which has consumed me. In taking so much control over the daily lives of my people, and there is fear, too, for what I am about to do. This disturbs me, but I must not show it. Dr. N. Why is your mother kneeling on the temple steps before you? Subject. She has broken into the storage house and stolen food to give to the people. Many are hungry at this time of year, but I alone can order distribution. The food must be measured out carefully. Dr. N. Did she act against some rule of food rationing? Was this a question of survival? Subject. Abruptly. There is more to this. By disobeying me, she is undermining my authority. Yeah, this definitely sounds like someone who's got authority issues, for sure. I use the distribution of food as a means of control over my people. You don't say. I want them all to be loyal to me. Dr. N, what are you going to do with your mother? Subject, with conviction, my mother has violated the law. I can save her, but she must be punished as an example. I decide she will die. It's kind of harsh. Dr. N, how do you feel about killing your own mother, Harum? Subject, it must be done. She has been a constant thorn in my side, causing unrest amongst my people because of her position. I cannot govern freely with her here any longer. Even now, she is defiant. I order her death by banging my staff on the stone steps. Dr. N, later on, are you sad about ordering your mother's execution? Subject, voice becomes strained. I must not think about such things if I am to maintain power. Wow. At this point, Steve's mind had relived two emotionally wrenching events involving voluntary actions of separation between mother and son. Although he had made the karmic connection, it was important that his abandonment as a baby not be isolated as pure historic retribution. For healing to begin, we had to go further. The next stage in our mission, or our session together, was designed to recover Steve's soul identity. To do this, I took him into the spirit world. In each of my cases, I try to bring the subject back to the most appropriate spiritual area to get the best results. In case 13, I use the place of orientation. With case 27, we will go back to relive the spiritual time just after his return from the place of life selection. In this setting, I want Steve to see the reasons for his current body choice and the role of other soul participants in his life. Dr. N, by what name are you known in the spirit world? Subject, Sumus. Dr. N, all right, Sumus, since we are now in the spirit world again, I want us to go to the period just following your initial viewing of the man who is Steve. What are your thoughts? Subject, such a resentful man. He is so angry about his mother dumping him on the doorstep, and those hard-nosed people who will take over as his parents. I don't know if I even want to take this body. Dr. N, I understand, but why don't we put that decision aside for a few minutes while other things develop? Tell me what you actually do once you leave the place of life selection. Subject, sometimes I want to be by myself for a while. Usually I am anxious to have the opinions of my friends about the lives I look at, especially one this rough. Dr. N, surely you had more than one body option? Subject shakes head. This one I should take. It's a rough decision. Dr. N, tell me, Sumus, when you are back with your group of friends, what do you discuss the possibility of yourself associating with some of them in the next life? Subject, yes, more often than not, these close friends are going to be in my life to come, just as I will be in theirs. Some of my clutch will not be in certain lives. It doesn't matter. We all discuss our next life with each other. I want to get their ideas on details. You see, we all know each other so well, our strengths and weaknesses, former successes and failures, what to watch out for, that kind of thing. Dr. N, did you discuss with them any details about the kind of person you should be in your next life before actually going to the place of life selection? Subject, oh yeah, in a roundabout way, nothing concrete. Now that I have seen Steve and who the others might be in relation to him in this life, there are reservations, so I talked to Jor. Dr. N, is Jor your guide? Subject, yes, he listened a lot to what I had to say about who I thought I should be before I was sent to the place where we look at lives. Dr. N, okay, Sunas, you have just returned from your primary cluster group from the place of life selection. What do you do first? Subject, I talk about this guy, Steve, who is so unhappy. No real mother, all that stuff. What kinds of people will be around him? Their plans, too. It must fit together. It must fit all together for us. Dr. N, you mean which souls are going to take certain bodies? Subject, right. We need to firm that up. Dr. N, are soul assignments still negotiable at this point, or is everyone told which body they will be in after leaving the place of life selection? Subject, no one is forced to do anything. We know what should be done. Jor and the others help us make adjustments. They are sent in to round out the picture. Subject's face becomes grave. Dr. N, is something bothering you at this moment, Sumus? Subject, in a cheerless manner, my friends are moving away. There are others coming. Oh. Dr. N, I gather some deliberations are about to occur with other souls. Just try to relax as best you can. On my command, you will clearly relate to me everything that is happening. Do you understand? Subject nervously, yes. Dr. N, begin. How many entities do you see? Subject, there are 4 of them coming over to me. Jor is one of them, or Joe, I guess, is one of them. Dr. N, who is first? Subject grabs my hand. She wants to be my mother again. Dr. N, is this the soul of the woman who is Harum and Steve's mother? Subject, yes, she is. Oh, I don't want to. Subject, Dr. N, what's going on? Subject, Ione is telling me it's time for us to settle things, to be in a disordered life as mother and son again. Dr. N, but Sumus, didn't you know this at the place of life selection when you viewed Steve's mother taking her baby to the church? Subject, I saw the people, the possibility. It was still an abstract consideration. It wasn't actually me yet. I guess I need more convincing because Yoni is here for a reason. Dr. N, I take it none of these newly arrived entities is from your own clutch? Subject sighs, no, they are not. Dr. N, why did you and Yoni wait 4,000 years before discussing a balancing out of your treatment of her in Arabia? Subject, Earth years mean nothing. It could have been yesterday. I just wasn't ready to offset the harm I did her as Harum. She says the circumstances are right for this exercise now. Dr. N, if your soul joins with the body of Steve in Texas, will Yoni consider this karmic payment for your debt? Subject, pause. My life as Steve is not supposed to be punishment. Dr. N, I'm glad you see that. So what is the lesson to be learned? Subject, to feel what desertion is like in a family relationship. Deliberate serving. Dr. N, deliberate severing. Dr. N, the severing of the mother and son bond by deliberate action? Subject, yes. To appreciate what it is like to be cast off. Dr. N, allow Yoni to move away and have the other entities join us, Sumus. Subject, distressed. Yoni is floating back to Jor. Coming forward are, oh shit, it's Talu and Kalish. Subject squirms in his chair and tries to ward off the two spirits in his mind by pushing the palms of his hands outward. Dr. N, who are they? Subject in a rush of words. Talu and Kalish have volunteered to be Steve's, my foster parents. They work together a lot. Dr. N, what's the problem then? Subject, I just don't want them again so soon. Dr. N, slow down for me, Sumus. You have worked with these souls before? Subject, still muttering to himself, yes, yes, but they are so hard for me to be with, especially Kalish. It's too soon. They were my in-laws in the German life. Note, we digress for a few minutes while Sumus briefly explains a past life in Europe as a high-ranking army officer who neglected his family and was the object of scorn from his wife's influential parents. Dr. N, are you saying that Talu and Kalish lack the capability for the assignment of being your foster parents in Texas? Subject shakes head with resignation. No, they know what they're doing. It's just that with Kalish, it's going to be a rough ride. She chooses to be people who are critical, demanding, cold. Dr. N, does she always present that sort of behavior in human bodies? Subject, well, that's her style with me. Kalish is not a soul who engages easily with others. She is independent and very determined. Dr. N, how about Talus, your adoptive father? Subject, stern, allows Kalish to lead, can be too detached, emotionally private. I'm going to really rebel against them at this time. Dr. N, okay, but will they teach you something? Subject, yes, I know they will, but I am still arguing about it. Jor and Ione can come over. Dr. N, what do you say next at this conference? Subject, I want Ione to be my foster mother. They all laugh at me. Jor won't buy my explanations. He knows I am close to Ione. Dr. N, do they make fun of you, Sumus? Subject, oh no, it's not that way at all. Talu and Kalish question my reluctance to tackle my faults with them. Dr. N, well, I was getting the impression you thought these souls were ganging up on you to force a decision to join with a Texas baby. Subject, that's not how it goes here. We are discussing my misgivings about the life itself. Dr. N, but I thought you didn't like Talu and Kalish. Subject, they know about me. I need strict people or I ride over them. Everyone here sees I have a tendency to indulge myself. They convince me an easy life without them will be like treading water. Both of them are very disciplined. Dr. N, well, it sounds like you have about made up your mind to go with them into the Texas life. Subject, musing, yes, they're going to make a lot of demands on me as a child. Kalish, sarcastic. Talu is a perfectionist. Losing Ione is going to be a rough ride. Dr. N, what will playing the roles of your parents do for Talu and Kalish? Subject, Kalish and Talu are in different configurations than me. I'm not supposed to get all muddled up in their business. It has something to do with their being rigid people and overcoming pride. Dr. N. When you are on Earth, does your soul mind always know the reason why certain people who influence your positivity or negativity are significant in your life? Subject. Yes, but that doesn't mean the person I am in that life understands why my spirit knows. And then he smiles. That's what we should be able to figure out on Earth. Dr. N. Which is what we are doing now? Subject. Yeah, and I'm cheating a little bit with you helping, but it's okay. I can use it. It does seem an enigma that knowledge of who we really are as souls is so difficult for many of us to reach through our conscious minds. By now, I'm sure the reader has discerned that even in a superconscious state, we do retain the ability to observe ourselves with a portion of the critical center of our conscious mentality. Assisting clients in reaching their inner selves by linking all facets of the mind is the most important part of my work in hypnotherapy. I want Steve to gain insight into the motives of his behavior by understanding the soul. The dialogue which follows provides us with further discourses as to why Sumus integrated into Steve's body. The spiritual conference with Jor, Eon, and Talu and Kalish is over, and I have taken Sumus to a quiet setting in the spirit world for this discussion. Pardon me while I take a sip. Dr. N, tell me, Sumus, how much of who you really are as a soul identity is reflected in the human beings you have occupied? Subject, quite a lot, but no two bodies are alike. Laughs, good body and soul and mergers don't always happen, you know. I remember some of my former bodies more fondly than others. Dr. N, would you say your soul dominates or is subordinate by the human brain? Subject, that's difficult to answer because there are subtle differences with the brain of each body which affects how we exhibit ourselves from that body. A human would be pretty vacant without us. We treat earth bodies with respect, though. Dr. N, what do you think human beings would be like without souls? Subject, oh, dominated by senses and emotions. uh, Dr. N, and you believe each human brain causes you to react differently? Subject, well, that which I am is able to utilize some bodies better than others. I don't always feel fully attached to a human being. Some physical emotions are overpowering and I am not so effective. Dr. N, such as the high level of rage displayed by Steve's temperament, perhaps affected by the central nervous system of this body? Subject, yes, we inherit these things. Dr. N, but you knew that Steve would be like before you chose his body. Subject in disgust. That's right, and it's typical of how I can make a bad situation worse. I am able to interpret only when the storms of the human mind are quiet, and yet I want to be stormy people. That's a very good point. Dr. N, what do you mean by interpret? Subject, interpret ideas, make sense out of Steve's reactions to turmoil. This is why like things like meditation, you guys, is so important because you can do so much of this work while we're still here on in living, and it does benefit you while you're here. Dr. N, continuing, Dr. N, to be frank, Sumus, you sound like a stranger inside Steve's body. Subject, I'm sorry to give you that impression. We don't control the human mind. We try by our presence to elevate it to see meaning in the world and to be receptive to morality, to give understanding. Dr. N, that's all very well, but you use human bodies for your own development too, don't you? Subject, sure, it's a blending. We give and take with our energy. Dr. N, oh, you tailor your energy to fit a host body? Subject, it would be better to say I use different facets of expression depending on the emotional drives of each body. Dr. N, let's get specific, Sumus. What is going on between you and Steve's brain at this time on Earth? Subject, I have felt submerged. Sometimes my energy is tired and unresponsive to so much negativity. Dr. N, looking back to your choices of Harun, Steve, and other human bodies in between, do they all have traits in common which attract you? Subject, long pause. I am a contact entity. I seek humans who involve themselves aggressively with others. Dr. N, when I hear the word aggression, this means hostility to me as opposed to being assertive. Is this what you intended to say? Subject, pause. Well, I'm attracted to those who influence other people. Ah, vigorously, at full tilt. Dr. N, are you a soul who enjoys controlling other people? Subject, I wouldn't say control exactly. I avoid choosing to be people who have no intense involvement with those around them. Dr. N, Sumus, are you being controlling when you try to direct other souls in their lives? Subject, no response. Dr. N, what would George say about your human relationships? Subject, that I like power as a means of influencing the acts of humans who are decision makers, that I crave social and political groups where I lead. Dr. N, so you would not enjoy being a human body which was quiet and unassuming. Subject, definitely not. Dr. N, I push harder. Sumus, isn't it true that you took pleasure in the way you were a part of Harum's misuse of power in Arabia, and that you gained satisfaction as Steve from mistreating your employees in Texas? Subject loudly, no, that isn't true. Things get out of hand easily when you try to lead humans. It's the conditions on Earth which screw everything up. It isn't all my fault. Dr. N, is it possible that both Harum and Steve became more extreme in their conduct because your soul was with them? Subject heavily, I haven't done well. I know that. Dr. N, look, Sumus, I hope you know I don't think you are a bad soul, but maybe you are easily seduced by the trappings of human authority, and you have now become someone who feels in conflict with society. Subject disturbed, you are beginning to sound like Jor. Dr. N, I don't presume to be doing that, Sumus. Perhaps Jor is helping us both to understand what is going on inside of you. Subject, probably. Steve and I have reached a productive stage of contact with his soul. I address this subject as if he were two people, while tightening the bowstrings between this conscious and unconscious self. After applying additional conditioning to pull these two forces together, I close our session with a final series of questions. It is important his mind not be allowed to drift or his memories to become disassociated. To foster responsiveness, my questions are confrontive and spoken rapidly to increase the tempo of my subject's answer. Dr. N, Sumus, begin by telling me why you originally accepted Steve's body. Subject, to rise above my attraction for leading others, always wanting to be in charge. Dr. N, is your soul identity in conflict with the direction Steve's life has taken? Subject, I don't like that part of him which is fighting to be on top and at the same time having thoughts of escape by self-destruction. Dr. N, if this is a contradiction for you, why does it exist? Subject, childhood, sadness. Dr. N, who am I listening to now, Sumus? Why aren't you more active in helping yourself, as Steve? Overcome the shame of abandonment by Ione and your anger from an unloving childhood with Talu and Kalish. Subject, I am grown now and managing others. Won't let people hurt me anymore. Dr. N, Sumus, if you and Steve are now speaking to me as one intelligence, I want to know why your lifestyle is so self-destructive. Subject, long pause. Because my weakness is using power for self-preservation on Earth. Dr. N, do you feel if you were less controlling of people as an adult, life would revert to the day you were treated as a child? Subject, angrily, yes. Dr. N, and when you don't get self-gratification from the body of your choice, what do you do as a soul? Subject, I tune out. Dr. N, I see. And how is this accomplished, Sumus? Subject, by not being too active. Dr. N, because you're intimidated by a body in an emotional tailspin? Subject, well, I go into a shell. Dr. N, so you use an avoidance in not actively dealing with the major lesson you came to Earth to learn? Subject, uh-huh. Dr. N, Steve, your adoptive parents were rough on you, weren't they? Subject, yes. Dr. N, do you know why? Do you now see why? Subject, pause, to know what being constantly judged is like. Dr. N, what else? Subject, to overcome and be whole. And then bitterly he says, I don't know. Dr. N, I think you do know, Steve. Tell me about the damaged self you present to people around you. Subject, after some procrastination, pretending to be happy, covering up my feelings by drinking and mistreating people. Dr. N, do you want to stop this cover-up and go to work? Subject, yes, I do. Dr. N, define who you really want to be. Subject, tearfully, we don't want to be hostile to people. Don't want to risk being a non-person without respect or recognition either. Dr. N, so are you on a fence? Subject, quietly, yes, life is so painful. Dr. N, do you think this is an accident? Subject, no, I see it isn't. Dr. N, Steve and Sumus, repeat after me. Quote, I'm going to give back the pain of Ioni, Talu, and Kalish, which they gave to me for my own good, and get on with my life by becoming the identity I really want to be, unquote. Subject repeats these words 3 times for me. Dr. N, Steve, what are you going to do about revealing yourself in the future and taking responsibility for improvement? Subject: after a couple of false starts, learn to be more honest. Dr. N: and to trust that you are not a victim of society. Subject: yes. This case ended with my friend, my reinforcing Steve's understanding of who he really is and his mission in life. I wanted to help liberate him as a person of value with a contribution to make in society. We talk about his love and fear choices, as well as the necessity to get in touch with himself frequently. I felt we had laid the groundwork for his dealing with resentment and a lack of intimacy. I reminded Steve of the need for follow up counseling. About a year later, he wrote to tell me his recovery was going well and that he had found the lost child within himself. Steve realized his past mistakes were not failures, but the means to improvement. Case 27 demonstrates how the hard tasks we set for ourselves often begin in childhood. This is why considerable weight is given to family selection by the soul. The idea that each of us voluntarily agreed to be children of a given set of parents before we came into this life is a difficult concept for some people to accept. Although the average person has experienced love from his or her parents, many of us have unresolved, hurtful memories of those near us who should have offered protection and did not. We grew up thinking of ourselves as victims of biological parents and family members whom we inherited without any choice in the matter. This assumption is wrong. When clients tell me how much they suffered from the actions of family members, my first question to their conscious mind is, quote, if you had not been exposed to this person as a child, what would you now lack in understanding, unquote. It may take a while, but the answer is in our minds. There are spiritual reasons for our being raised as children around certain kinds of people, just as other people are designed to be near us as adults. To know ourselves spiritually means understanding why we join in life with the souls of parents, siblings, spouses, and close friends. There is usually some karmic purpose for receiving pain or pleasure from someone close to us. Remember, along with learning our own lessons, we come to learn to Earth to play a part in the drama of others' lessons as well. Yeah, exactly. It's like a huge interconnecting web, right? So why it's important to be active in your mind and practice meditation, self-realization, all those things. It makes living in this world within this soup of crazy karma a little easier to navigate. Continuing, there are people who, because they live in a terrible environment, suspect the spirit world of not being a center of divine compassion. However, it is the ultimate in compassion when beings who are spiritually linked to each other come forward by prior agreement into human lives involving love-hate relationships. Overcoming adversity in these relationships may mean we don't have to repeat certain abrasive alliances in future lives. Surviving such trials on Earth places us into a heightened state of perception with each new life and enhances our identity as souls. People in trance may have trouble making a clear distinction between their soul identity and human ego. If the human personality has little structure beyond the five senses and basic drives for survival without ensoulment, then the soul is our total personality. This means, for example, that one could not have a human ego which is jealous and also possess a soul which is not jealous. Yet my cases indicate there are subtle variations between their soul identities and all that is manifested by the human personalities of many host bodies. Case 27 shows similarities and differences in the personalities of Harum and Steve. Our constant soul self seems to be a governing agent of human temperament, but we may express ourselves differently with each body. The souls of my subjects apparently select bodies which try to match their character flaws with human temperament or specific growth patterns. In one life, an overly cautious, low energy soul might be disposed to blending with a quiet, rather subdued human host. This same soul, encouraged to take greater risk in another life, could choose to work more in opposition to its natural character by melding with a temperamentally high strung, aggressive body type on Earth. Souls both give and receive mental gifts in life through a symbiosis of human brain cells and intelligent energy. Deep feelings generated by an internal consciousness are conjoined with human emotion and the expression of one personality, which is as it should be. We don't need to change who we are in relation to life's experiences, only our negative reactions to these events. Asian Buddhists say enlightenment is seeing the absolute soul ego reflected in the relative human ego and acting through it during life. That's very well put. Very well put. In the chapters on in the chapters on beginning, intermediate, and advanced soul levels, I gave case samples of soul maturity. I think souls do demonstrate their own patterns of ego in the bodies they inhabit, and they exert a powerful influence over body performance. However, making hasty judgments on a soul's maturity based solely on the behavioral traits has its pitfalls. The design plan of souls could include holding parts of their energy in reserve in some lives. Sometimes a negative trait is selected by an otherwise developed soul for special attention in a certain body. We have seen now a soul selects the person with whom it wishes to associate in given life. This does not mean that it has absolute control over that body. In extreme cases, a fractured personality struggling with internalized conflicts may result in a dissociative reaction to reality. I feel that this is a sign the soul is not always able to regulate and unify the human mind. I have mentioned how souls may become so buried by human emotions and bodies, which are unstable, that by the time of death they are contaminated spirits. If we become obsessed by our physical bodies or carried along on an emotional roller coaster in life, the soul can be subverted by its outer self. And so, you know, this is a very important point here. This whole thing about if, let me read that again. I have mentioned before how souls have become so buried in human emotions in bodies which are unstable that by the time death they are contaminated spirits. If we become obsessed by our physical bodies or carried along on an emotional roller coaster in life, the soul can be subverted by its outer self. So it's like, your ego of what you think you are here living in this planet, and that's full control. Like, there is no inward looking in or anything like that. And I can honestly look around the world and think and see that a lot of that is going on, but it's not by accident. Unfortunately, our education system and everything else is just, it's so funny how this is like black magic in a way. It's like the people at the top, they know so much of this information, and so the point is that they have gotten control of the education systems and various cultural and religious systems, and they're pushing these kinds of ideas, not religious systems, I should say, but like this whole idea where everything is so centered on the body and the image and the ego and your look and you know your popularity or whatever it is. It's all just one gigantic materialistic mess, and and out of that you have just countless people out there who just are rolling along, like he says here, on the emotional roller coaster of life, and they have no clue what's going on, and they're just being, I would even say, like a tidal wave, because they're just being carried along. They have there's no direction, and there's no anything to take them anywhere, and it's a shame because I see this so often, so just everywhere, especially on social media. People just are so lost, and the hatred and the anger and everything else is just spewing out all over the place right now. And 2021 is just, I don't know. It's, I've been watching this as a slow creep for half of my life. So it's not a surprise to me that things are as bad as they are because, this kind of stuff has been pushed on us for so long. So continuing, just found that interesting that he makes that connection with the spirit world as well. Many great thinkers in history believe the soul can never be fully homogeneous with the human body and that humans have two intellects. I consider human ideas and imagination as emanating from the soul, which provides a catalyst for the human brain. How much reasoning power we would have without souls is impossible to know, but I feel that the attachment of souls to humans supplies us with insight and an abstract thought. I view the soul as offering humans a qualitative reality subject to conditions of heredity and environment. If it is true that every human brain has a host of biological characteristics, including raw intelligence and the facility for invention, which are separate from the soul, then choosing our body raises an important question. Do souls choose bodies whose intellectual capabilities match their own development? For instance, are advanced souls drawn to human brains with high intelligence? In looking at the scholastic and academic achievements of my clients, I find there is no more correlation here than with an immature soul being inclined to bodies with lower intellectual aptitudes. The philosopher Kant wrote that the human brain is only a function of consciousness, not the source of real knowledge. And to tell you the truth, a lot of science is showing that the brain is really more of an antenna receiving and sending out information than it is anything else. Continuing, we'll get into that later when we get into some of the science. Regardless of body choice, I find souls to demonstrate their individualism through the human mind. A person may be highly intelligent and yet have a closed attitude about adjusting to new situations with little curiosity about the world. This indicates a beginner soul to me. If I see someone with an evenness of mood whose interests and abilities are solidly in focus and directed towards helping human progress, I suspect an advanced soul at work. These are souls who seek personal truths beyond the demands of ego. Does seem a heavy burden that in every new life, a soul must search all over again to find its true self in a different body. However, some light is allowed through the blackout of amnesia by spiritual masters who are not indifferent to our plight. When it comes to finding soulmates on Earth and remembering aspects of the lives we saw in the place of life selection, there is an ingenious form of coaching which is given to souls just before the next life. We will see how this is done in the following chapter. Okay. Preparation. So I think these are just the last 2 chapters. And it is almost noon here, so I need to take another quick break. This one might be a little bit longer than the last one, but it'll be no more between 5 and 10 minutes. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. And let's see here. Put a little of this. Sorry, it's the same song too. I'll change that soon. Be back in a second.
back and taking the break screen off, and we're just going to get right into it. Make sure, okay, things are going good. All right, so I think I'm going to be able to get through the rest of this book today. At least I'm going to make an attempt at getting through the rest of this book today. So let's see here. Chapter 14, Preparation for Embarkation. After souls have completed their consultations with guides and peers about the many physical and psychological ramifications of a new life and body choice, the decision to incarnate is made. It would be logical to assume that they would then go immediately to Earth. This doesn't happen before a significant element of preparation occurs. Take a quick sip. By now I'm sure it is understood that souls returning from the place of life selection must not only sort out the best choice of who they're going to be in their next life, but coordinate this decision with other players in the coming drama. Using the analogy of life as being one big stage play, we will have the lead role as an actor or actress. Everything we do in the play affects other minor characters, minor because they are not us in the script. Their parts can be altered by us and ours by them because script changes. The result of free will can be made while the play is in progress. Those souls who are going to have a close association with us on the stage of life represent our supporting cast, each with prominent roles. But how will we know them? The issue of how to find soulmates and other important people in their lives is of paramount concern with many clients who come to me seeking hypnotic regression. Eventually, most of my subjects answer their own questions in superconsciousness because finding these souls was an integral part of their preparations for leaving the spirit world. The space souls go to for this is in the spirit world is commonly called the place of recognition, or recognition class. I am told the activity here is like cramming for a final exam. As a result, my subject also use the term prep class to describe this aspect of spiritual reinforcement that occurs just before their souls embark on the passage back to Earth. The next case represents this experience. In order to clearly understand what is behind the spiritual activity of a recognition class, perhaps the word soulmate ought to be defined. For many of us, our nearest and dearest soulmate is our spouse. Yet, as we have seen in previous cases, souls of consequence in our lives may also be other family members or a close friend. The amount of time they are with us on Earth can be long or short. What matters is the impact they have on us while here. At the risk of oversimplifying a complex issue, our relationships can be divided into a few general categories. First, there is a kind of relationship involving love, which is so deep that both partners genuinely don't see how each other could live without the other. This is a mental and physical attraction which is so strong neither partner doubts that they were meant for each other. Second, there are relationships based upon companionship, friendship, and mutual respect. Finally, we have associations based largely upon more casual acquaintances which offer some purposeful ingredient to our life. Thus, a soulmate can take many forms, and meeting people who fall into one of these categories is no game of Russian roulette. Soulmates are designated companions to help you and themselves accomplish mutual goals which can best be achieved by supporting each other in various situations. In terms of friends and lovers, identity recognition of kindred spirits comes from our highest consciousness. It is a wonderful and mysterious experience, both physically and mentally. Connecting with beings we know from the spirit world in all sorts of physical disguises can be harmonious or frustrating. The lesson we must learn from human relationships is accepting people for who they are without expecting our happiness to be totally dependent upon anyone. Agreed. I have had clients come to me with the assumption that they are probably not with a soulmate because of so much turmoil and heartbreak in their marriages and relationships. They fail to realize that karmic lessons set difficult standards for each of us, and painful experiences involving the heart are deliberate tests in life. They are often the hardest kind. I would agree with that. Whatever the circumstances, relationships between people are the most vital part of our lives. Is it coincidence, ESP, deja vu, or synchronicity when the right time and place come together and you meet someone for the first time who will bring meaning to your life? Was there a fleeting, forgotten memory, something familiar tugging at the back of your mind? I would ask the reader to sort through those memories involving a distinctive first encounter with someone important in the past. Was it at school? Did this individual live in your neighborhood?
How about meeting him or her at work or during some recreation? Did someone introduce you, or was it a chance meeting? What did you feel at that moment? I hate to tamper with your fond recollections of a supposedly spontaneous past meeting, but such descriptions as chance, happenstance, or impulse aren't applicable to crucial contacts. This makes them no less romantic. In cases involving soulmates, I have heard many heartfelt accounts of close spiritual beings who journeyed across time and space to find each other as physical beings at a particular geographic spot on Earth at a certain moment. It is also true our conscious amnesia can make meeting significant people difficult, and we may take a wrong turn and miss the connection at some juncture. However, there can be a prearrangement here for backup contingencies. In the case which follows, I will begin the dialogue at a point in the session where I am asking my subject about his spirit world activity just before rebirth into his present life. Case 28. Dr. N. Is it close to the time you will be leaving the spirit world for another life? Subject. Yes, I'm about ready. Dr. N. After you leave the place of life selection, was your soul mind made up as to who you would be and the people you were to meet on Earth? Subject. Yes, everything is beginning to come together for me. Dr. N. What if you had a second thoughts about your choice of a time frame or a particular human body? Could you back out? Subject sighs. Yes, and I have done that before. We all have, at least the people I know. Most of the time it's intriguing to think about being alive on Earth again. Dr. N. But what if you resisted coming back to Earth shortly before you were due to incarnate? Subject. It's not that rigid. I would always discuss the possibilities. My concerns for a new life with my tutor and companions before making a firm commitment. The tutors know when we are stalling, but I have made up my mind. Dr. N. Well, I'm glad. Now, tell me, once you are firmly committed to return to Earth, does anything else importance transpire for you in the spirit world? Subject. I must go to the recognition class. Dr. N. What is this place like for you? Subject. It's an observation meeting with my companions, so I can recognize them later. Dr. N. When I snap my fingers, you will go immediately to this class. Are you ready? Subject. Yes, I am. Dr. N. Snapping his fingers. Explain to me what you were doing. Subject. I am floating in with others to hear the speaker. Dr. N. I would like to accompany you, but you will have to be my eyes. Is that all right? Subject. Sure, but we must hurry a little. Dr. N. How does this place appear to you? Subject. A circular auditorium with raised dais in the middle. That's where the speakers are. Dr. N. Are we going to float in and sit down on seats? Subject shakes head. Why would we need seats? Dr. N. Just wondering how many souls are around us. Subject. Oh, about 15, 10 or 15. People who are going to be close to me in the life to come. Dr. N. That's all the souls you see? Subject. No, you asked how many were around me. There are others further away in groups to hear their speakers. Dr. N. Are the 10 or 15 souls around you all from your cluster group? Subject. Some of them. Dr. N. Is this gathering similar to the one near the gateway where you met a few people right after your last life? Subject. Oh no, that was more quiet, with just my family. Dr. N. Why was that homecoming meeting more quiet than where we are now? Subject. I was still in a daze from losing my body. Here, there is lots of conversations and milling around, anticipation. Our energy is really up. Listen, we have to move along faster. I have got to hear what the speakers are saying. Dr. N. Are these speakers your tutor guides? Subject. No, they are the prompters. Dr. N. Are they souls who specialize in this sort of thing? Subject. Yes, they give us the signs by coming up with ingenious ideas. Dr. N. Okay, let's move in closer to the prompter while you continue to tell me what is happening. Subject. We form a circle around the dais. The prompter is floating back and forth in the center, pointing a finger at each of us, saying we must pay close attention. I have to do it. Dr. N. Lowering my voice. I understand it, and I wouldn't want you to miss a thing, but please explain what you mean by signs. Subject. This prompter is assigned to us, so we will know what to look for in our next life. The signs are placed in our minds now in order to jog our memories later as humans. Dr. N. What kind of signs? Subject. Flags, marker in the roads of life. Dr. N. Could you be more specific? Subject. The road signs kick us into a new direction in life at certain times when something important is supposed to happen. And when we must know the signs to recognize one another too. Dr. N. And this class takes place for souls before each new life? Subject, naturally, we need to remember the little things. Dr. N, but haven't you already previewed the details of your next life in the place of life selection? Subject, that's true, but not the small details. Besides, I didn't know all the people who would be operating with me then. This class is a final review of bringing all of us together. Dr. N, for those of you who will have an impact on each other's lives? Subject, that's right. It's mainly a prep class because we won't recognize each other at first on Earth. Dr. N, do you see your primary soulmate here? Subject, flushing, she is here, and there are other people that I'm supposed to contact, or they will contact me in some way. The others need their signs, too. Dr. N, oh, so that's why these souls are a mixed gathering of entities from different groups. They are all going to play some significant role in each other's life. Subject, impatiently, yes, but I can't listen to what's going on with you talking. Shh. Dr. N, lowering my voice again. All right, on the count of 3, I'm going to hold this class in suspension for a few minutes so you won't miss anything. Softly, 1, 2, 3. The speaker is now quiet while you are going to explain a little more about the flags and the signs, okay? Subject, I guess so. Dr. N, I'm going to call these signs memory triggers. So are you telling me there will be special triggers for each of these people with you? Subject, that's why we have been brought together. There will be times in my life when these people will appear. I must try to remember some, action by them, the way they look, move, talk. Dr. N, and each will trigger a memory for you? Subject, yeah, and I'm going to miss some. The signs are supposed to click in our memory right away and tell us, quote, oh, good, you are here now, unquote. Inside us, we can say to ourselves, quote, it is time to work on the next phase, unquote. They seem like insignificant little things, but the flags are turning points in our lives. Dr. N, what if people miss these road flags or signs of recognition because, like you said, you forget what the prompter told you? Or what if you choose to ignore your inclinations and take another path? Subject, pause. We have other choices. They may not be as good. You can be stubborn, but, and then he stops. Dr. N, but what? Subject, with conviction. After this class, we usually don't forget the important signs. Dr. N, why don't our guides just give us the answers we need on Earth? Why all this fooling around with signs to remember things? Subject, for the same reason we go to Earth without knowing everything in advance. Our soul power grows with what we discover. Sometimes our lessons get resolved pretty fast, usually not. The most interesting part of the road are the turns, and the best not to ignore the flags in our mind. Yeah, I like that. It's true. Our soul power grows with what we discover, which is, again, why it's so important for your own meditative time that we all should spend with ourselves, delving into ourselves. So there's no reason why, Jesus is quoted as saying, the kingdom of heaven is within you, because, it's funny how so many aspects of things like that are represented in this book. But, and it's also a shame that the New Testament as we have it today is such a jumbulation of so many different things that we will never know what he really wanted to teach us. But we got some clues, don't we? So continuing. Dr. N, all right, I'm going to count from 10 down to 1, and when I reach 1, your class will start again and you will listen while the prompter gives out signs. I will not speak until you raise the index finger of your right hand. This will be my sign that the class is over, and you can relate to me the signs you are to remember. Are you ready? Subject, yes. Note, I finish my count and wait a couple minutes before my subject raises his finger. This is a simple example of why time comparisons between Earth and spirit worlds are meaningless. Dr. N, that didn't take long. Subject, yes it did. The speaker had a lot to go through with all of us. Dr. N, I assume you have the details of recognition signs now firmly in your mind. Subject, I hope so. Dr. N, good. Then tell me about the last sign you were given as the class ended. Subject, pause. A silver pendant. I will see it when I am 7 years old around the neck of a woman on my street. She always wore it. Dr. N, how will this silver object trigger for you? Subject, abstractly. It shines in the sun to catch my attention. I must remember. Dr. N, in a commanding voice, you have the capacity to bring your spiritual and earthly knowledge together, placing my hand on the subject's forehead. Why is the soul of this woman important for you to know? Subject, I meet her riding my bike on our street. She smiles. The silver pendant is bright. I ask about it. We become friends. Dr. N, then what? Subject, wistfully, I will know her only a short time before we move, but it is enough. She will read to me and talk to me about life and teach me to Respect people. Dr. N. As you grow older, can people themselves be signs or provide flags to help you make a connection? Subject. Sure. They might arrange introductions at the right time. Dr. N. Do you already know most of the souls who will be meaningful people to you on Earth? Subject. Yes. And if I don't, I'll meet them in class. Dr. N. I guess they can set up love relationship meetings too? Subject laughs. Oh, the matchmakers. Yes, they do that, but meetings can be for friendship, getting people together to help your career, that kind of stuff. Dr. N. Then the souls who are in the auditorium and elsewhere can be involved with different kinds of associations in your life? Subject enthusiastically. Yeah, I'm going to connect with the guy who is on my baseball team. Another one will be a farming partner. Then there will be my lifelong pal from grade school. Dr. N. What if you connect with the wrong person in business, love, or whatever? Does that mean you missed a relationship sign or a red flag for an important event? Subject. It probably won't be wrong exactly. It could be a jump start to get you going in a new direction. Dr. N. And you see, and that's another thing I wanted before we continue. You'll notice that a lot of these things, like there are no quote unquote wrong turns. They're just different, and they provide different opportunities and possibilities for different kinds of lessons. So I just want to throw that out there. Dr. N. Okay, now tell me what is the most important recognition sign you must remember from this prep class? Subject, Melinda's laugh. Dr. N, who is Melinda? Subject, my wife to be. Dr. N, what is there to remember about Melinda's laugh? Subject, when we meet, her laugh is going to sound like tiny bells, chimes. I really can't describe it to you. Then the scent of her perfume when we first dance, a familiar fragrance, and her eyes. Dr. N, so you were actually given more than one trigger sign for your soulmate. Subject, yes, I'm so dense, I guess the prompters thought I needed more clues. I didn't want to make a mistake when I met the right person. I've definitely felt like that in life. Dr. N, what is supposed to trigger her recognition of you? Subject grins, my big ears, stepping on her toes, dancing, what we feel when we first hold each other. It is an old saying that the eyes are the windows to our soul. No physical attribute has more impact when soulmates meet on earth. As to our other physical senses, as I mentioned in an earlier chapter, that souls retain such memories as sounds and smell. All five senses may be used by spiritual prompters as recognition signals in future lives. Case 28 began to express some discomfort with my keeping him from participating in his spiritual recognition class. I reinforced his visual association of floating around a central dais in an auditorium. Other people use different names. I gave my subject time to finish taking his instruction and communicating with his friends, and then moved him out of the place of recognition. It is my practice never to rush clients in and out of their spiritual settings during a session because I find that this hinders the intensity of concentration and recall. When we have had established ourselves away from the other souls, I talk to this man about his soulmate, Melinda. I learned these two souls were most comfortable in husband and wife roles, although occasionally they chose to relate differently in their lives together. Both these souls wanted to make sure they would connect on Earth in their current lives. I thought I would follow up on what actually had transpired. Dr. N, when you and Melinda came to Earth and were young, did you live close to each other? Subject, no. I lived in Iowa and she was in California. Musing, it was Claire that I knew in Iowa. Dr. N, were you interested in Claire romantically? Subject, yes, I almost married her. It was close, and that would have been a mistake. Claire and I weren't right for each other, but going together in high school had become a habit. Dr. N, and yet you left your home for town for California? Subject, yes, Claire didn't want me to go, but my parents wanted to leave our farm and move west. I liked Iowa and was uneasy about moving and torn over leaving Claire, who was still in high school. Dr. N, was there a road sign, a flag of some sort, which helped you make the decision to move with your parents? Subject sighs. It was my sister who waved a red flag at me. She convinced me I would have more opportunities in the city where my parents were planning to go. Dr. N, do you see your sister in the spirit world? Subject, oh yeah, she is in my circle, cluster group. Dr. N, is Claire one of your soulmates? Subject, pause. More of a friend, just friends. Dr. N, was leaving Claire hard for you? Subject, oh yes, even more for her. We were sexually attracted to each other in high school. The infatuation had no real mental connection. It was so hard on Earth to figure out what you were supposed to do with other people. Sex is a big trap. We would have grown bored with one another. I'm sure that's going to resonate to lots of different people. Dr. N, Was the physical attraction different with Melinda than you had with Claire? Subject pause. When Melinda and I met at the dance, there was the strong physical attraction of her body, and I guess she liked the way I looked too, but we both felt something more, much more. Dr. N, I want to get this straight. Did you and Melinda choose your male and female bodies in the spirit world deliberately to attract each other once you reached Earth? Subject nodded. To some extent, but we were attracted to each other on Earth because inside our minds was the memory of what we were supposed to look like. Dr. N, when the time of the dance rolled around, what happened to your mind? Subject, I can see it all now. Our tutor was helping Melinda and me that night. My idea to go to the dance was sudden. I hate to dance because I'm clumsy. I didn't know anybody in the town yet and felt stupid, and I was guided there. Dr. N, had you and Melinda scripted the dance scene together during the spiritual prep class? Subject, yes, we knew about it then, and when I saw her at the dance, alarms went off. I did something very uncharacteristic of me. I cut in on the man she was dancing with. When I first held her, my legs were like rubber. Dr. N, and what else did you and Melinda feel at that moment? Subject, as if we were in another world. There was this familiarity. It was so weird during that dance, a knowing without doubt that something important was unfolding. The guidance, the intent of our meeting, our hearts were racing. It was enchantment. Dr. N, then why was Claire in your life earlier as a complication? Subject, to tempt me to stay on the farm. One of the false trails I needed to get past, another kind of life. After I left, Claire found the right person. Dr. N, if you and Claire had taken the lesser trail together and missed your sister's flag, would that life have been a total disaster? Subject, no, but it would not have been as good. There is one main course of life which we chose in advance, but alternatives always exist, and we learn from them too. Dr. N, in your lives, do you ever make mistakes and take false trails and miss the flags in the roads for a job change, moving to another town, or meeting someone important because the details you saw at the place of life selection or in the recognition class were not implanted firmly enough? Subject, long pause. The signs are there, but sometimes I overrule my inclinations. There are times in my lives when I change directions because of too much thinking or analysis, or I do nothing for the same reasons. Dr. N, so you might do something other than what was planned in the spirit world. Subject, yes, yeah, and it may not work out as well. But we have the right to miss the red flags. Dr. N, well, I have enjoyed our talk about the place of recognition, and I wonder if there is anything else this spiritual class does for you later in physical life. Subject in a faraway voice, yes, sometimes when I'm confused about my life and I don't know where to turn next, I just imagine where I might be going compared to where I've been, and it comes to me what to do. Helping clients recognize people who are destined to have an impact on their lives is a fascinating aspect of my practice. I believe those who come to see me about relationships are not in my office at a certain point in their lives by chance. Am I spoiling the purpose of their spiritual recognition class by assisting these subjects in recalling clues? I don't think so for two basic reasons. What they are not supposed to know yet probably won't be revealed in hypnosis, while on the other hand, quite a few of my clients only want confirmation of what they already suspect is true. I can speak about recognition signs from personal experience since I was blessed by three specific clues to help me find my wife. Thumbing through Look magazine as a teenager, I once saw a Christmas advertisement for Hamilton watches modeled by a beautiful, dark-haired woman dressed in white. The caption in the ad said, quote, to Peggy, unquote, because she was holding a wristwatch as a gift from an imaginary husband. An odd sensation came over me, and I never forgot the name or face. On my 21st birthday, I received a watch of the same make from a favorite aunt. A few years later, while attending a graduate school in Phoenix, I was washing a load of white laundry one Saturday. Suddenly, the first trigger was activated in my mind with the message, quote, it's time to meet the woman in white, unquote. I tried to shake it off, but the face in the ad pushed all other thoughts away. I stopped, looked at my Hamilton watch, and heard the command, quote, go now, unquote. I thought about who wears white, acting as if I was obsessed. I went to the largest hospital in the city and asked at the desk for a nurse matching the name and description. I was told there was such a person who was coming off of her shift. When I saw her, I was stunned by the resemblance of the picture in my mind. Our meeting was awkward and embarrassing, but later we sat in the lobby and talked nonstop for 4 hours as old friends who hadn't seen each other for a while, in which, of course, was true. I waited until after we were married to tell my wife about the reason I came to her hospital and the clues given to me to find her. I didn't want her to think I was crazy. It was then I learned that on the day of our first meeting, she had told her astonished friends, quote, "I just met the man I'm going to marry," unquote. My advice to people about meaningful encounters is not to intellectualize coming events too much. I agree with that. Some of our best decisions come from what we call instinct, or I would say intuition. Go with your gut feelings at the time. When a special moment is meant to happen in life, it usually does. One of the last requirements before embarking for many souls is to go before the Council of Elders for the second time. While some of my subjects see the council only once between lives, most see them right after death and just before rebirth. The spirit world is an environment personified by order, and the elders want to reinforce the significance of a soul's goal for the next life. Sometimes my clients tell me they return to their spirit group after this meeting to say goodbye, while others say leave immediately for reincarnation. The latter procedure was used by a subject who described this exit meeting in the following manner, quote, "My guide, Marge, escorts me to a soft, white space which is like being in a cloud-filled enclosure. I see my committee of 3 waiting for me as usual. The middle elder seems to have the most commanding energy. They all have oval faces, high cheekbones, no hair, and smallish features. They seem to me to be sexless, or rather, they appear to blend from male to female and back. I feel calm. The atmosphere is formal but not unfriendly. Each in turn asks me questions in a gentle way. The elders are all knowing about my entire span of lives, but they are not as directive as one might think. They want my input to assess my motivations and the strength of my resolve towards working in my new body. I am sure they have had a hand in my body choices I was given for the life to come because I feel they are skilled strategists in life selection. The committee wants me to honor my contract. They stress the benefits of persistence and holding to my values under adversity. I often give in too easily to anger, and they remind me of this while reviewing my past actions and reactions towards events and people. The elders and okay, Magra, it's spelled differently up there. The elders and Magra give me my inspiration, hope, and encouragement to trust myself more in bad situations and not let things get out of hand. And then, as a final act to bolster my confidence, when I am about to leave, they raise their arms and send a powerful bolt of positive energy into my body to take with me. Unquote. One aspect of the 2 council meetings which I initially found rather odd is that members of the same soul group do not necessarily go before the same panel. For a while I assumed there would always be a correlation here because ALE members uh, I don't know I think that's a typo, because of members of a single soul group have the same guide. I was wrong. In the minds of my subjects, even minor guides are thought to be a couple of steps below the developmental levels of the omnipotent beings who make up their councils. They are similar to the old ones that Thies told us about in chapter 11, but with more specific responsibilities towards life evaluations of souls. While a guide might, in some respects, be considered a personal confidant to a soul, this same familiarity does not extend to an elder. In time, I came to appreciate that an elder's authority, unlike that of guides, involves a cross-section of souls from many groups. Apparently, everyone in a soul group respects the intensely private nature of these proceedings. They all see their individual councils of elders as godly. The elders are bathed in bright light, and the whole setting has an aura of divinity. A subject put it this way, quote, "When we are taken into the presence of these superior beings who exist in such a high spiritual realm, it validates our feelings about the source of creation." Unquote. Chapter 15, Rebirth. We have seen how a soul's decision to come forward into the next life as a specific time and place on earth involves an ordered progression of spiritual planning. As I bring the soul consciousness of my subjects nearer to the moment of their exit from the spirit world, most become quietly introspective, while others engage in light bantering with their friends. These reactions towards what lies ahead depend more upon the individual soul than on the length of time since a last incarnation. Rebirth is a profound experience. Those souls getting ready for embarkation to Earth are like battle-hardened veterans, girding themselves for combat. This is the last chance for souls to enjoy omniscience of knowing just who they are before they must adapt to a new body. My last case involves the soul of a woman who offers us a well-defined description of her most recent passage to Earth, case 29, which I believe this is the last chapter before the conclusion. Dr. N, has the time arrived for you to be reborn in your next life? Subject, yes, it has. Dr. N, what is uppermost in your mind about returning to Earth? Subject, the opportunity to live in the 20th century. It's an exciting time of many changes. Dr. N, and have you seen this life, or at least parts of it, in advance? Subject, yes, I've been through that. Subject seems distracted. Dr. N, is there something else you want to talk to me about concerning your next incarnation? Subject, I'm having a last talk with Pomar, subject's guide, on all the alternatives to my project, life. Dr. N, might this be considered a final exit interview with Pomar? Subject, yes, I suppose it would. Dr. N, would it help you to talk to me about the contingency plans you have for the next life? Subject, voices dry and rather thin. I think I have them straight. Dr. N, how did your recognition class go? I assume that phase of your preparation is complete? Subject, still distracted. Uh-huh. I met with the rest of the participants for my project, or life. Dr. N, are the recognition signs clear in your mind for meeting the right souls at the right time? Subject, nervous laugh. The signals, my compacts with people. Yes, that's all done. Dr. N, without analyzing or censoring your impressions in any way, tell me what you are feeling at this moment. Subject, I'm just gathering myself for the big jump into a new life. There's an apprehension, but I am excited too. Dr. N, are you a little scared and perhaps wondering if you should go to Earth at all? Subject, pause and then more cheerfully, a little concern for what lies ahead of me, leaving my home here, but happy too at the opportunity. Dr. N, so you have mixed emotions about leaving the spirit world? Subject, most of us do as our time draws near. I have second thoughts before leaving before some lives. But Pomar knows when I'm lagging behind my schedule. You can't hide anything here, you know. Dr. N, okay, let's assume it's a go situation for your next life. On the count of three, your decision to return to at an appointment time. I'm sorry. On the count of three, your decision to return at an appointed time is firm and you are in the final stage to leave the spirit world. 1, 2, 3. Describe to me what happens to you now. Subject, I say goodbye to everyone. This can be difficult. Tosses her head back with resolution. Anyway, they all wish me well and I move away from them. Drifting alone, there is no great rush. Pomar allows me to collect my thoughts when I am ready. He comes to escort me, to offer encouragement, reassurance, and he knows when I am prepared to go. Dr. N, I sense that you are now more upbeat about the prospect of rebirth. Subject, yes, it's a period of inspiration and expectations. A new body, the course ahead. I know, I now prepare this subject to leave the spirit world for the last time before her current life. I am careful here as when I brought her into the spirit world for the first time following normal age regression. Starting with a reinforcement of the protective energy shield already placed around this subject, I apply additional conditioning techniques to keep her soul in proper balance with the mind of the child she is joining on Earth. Dr. N, all right, you and Pomar are together for your exit from the spirit world. I want you to go deep inside yourself and explain to me what you do next as if it were happening in slow motion. Go. Subject, pause. We begin to move at a greater speed. Then I am aware of Pomar detaching from me, and I am alone. Dr. N, what do you see and feel? Subject, oh, I. Dr. N, stay with it. You're alone and moving faster. Then what? Subject in a faint voice, away, slanting away through pillows of whiteness, moving away. Dr. N, stay with it. Keep going and report back to me. Subject, oh, I'm passing through folds of silky cloth, smooth. I'm on a band, a pathway, faster and faster. Dr. N, keep going. Don't stop talking to me. Subject, everything is blurred. I'm sliding down into a long, dark tube, hollow, feeling darkness, then warmth. Dr. N, where are you now? Subject, pause. I'm aware of being inside my mother. Dr. N, who are you? Subject chuckles. I'm in a baby. I'm a baby. The hollow tube effect described by my cases is apparently not the mother's birth canal. It is similar to the tunnel soul passes through at physical death and may be the same route. The reader might wonder why I would take more care with the act of birthing when I have already brought my subjects in and out of a number of past lives during a session. There are two reasons. First, reliving a past life does not need to involve the birthing process. I help my clients go straight from the spirit world into the next life, usually as adults. Second, if I return subjects to their current body and decide to command them to relive the birthing experience, I want to remove any minor discomforts felt by someone after they wake up. Before continuing with this case, I should offer a little more general information about souls and babies. All my subjects tell me the transition of their souls from the spirit world to the mind of a baby is relatively more rapid than the passage back. What is the reason for this difference? After physical death, our souls travel through the time tunnel and move past the gateway into the spirit world in a progressive way. We have seen how the outward passage is intended to be more gradual than our return to earth in order to allow for acclimatization of a newly freed soul. However, as souls who enter babies, we come from a state of all-knowing and thus mentally able to adjust more quickly to our surroundings than at the end of a physical life. Then too, we are given additional time for adaptation while in our mother's womb. Nevertheless, having this time inside our mother does not mean we are fully prepared for the jarring paroxysm of birth, which blinding hospital lights having to suddenly breathe air and become physically handled for the first time. My subjects say if they were to compare the moment of birth with that of death, the physical shock of being born is much greater. I can imagine. At some point prior to birth, the soul will carefully touch and join more fully with the impressionable, developing brain of a baby. When a soul decides to enter a baby, apparently that child has no free choice in accepting or rejecting the soul. At the moment of first entry, the chronological time begins for the soul. Depending upon the inclinations of the particular soul involved, the connection may be early or late in the mother's pregnancy. I have had cases where souls time their arrivals at the last minute during delivery, but this is unusual. My findings indicate even those souls who join the baby early seem to do a lot of traveling outside the mother's womb during her term. Interesting. Once birth has taken place, the union of spirit and flesh has been fully solidified into a partnership. The immortal soul then becomes the seat of perception for the developing human ego. The soul brings a spiritual force which is the heritage of the infinite consciousness. Although I have said souls can be confined by a human in trauma, they are never trapped. Yeah, that's right. And so it's best to look at this as a veil, right? Instead of like a prison. It's like something that's obscuring your actual true vision, or your true spiritual vision, let's just say. Besides leaving at the moment of death, souls may also come and go when the body is sleeping, in deep meditation or under an anesthetic in surgery. The soul's absences are much longer in cases of severe brain damage and coma. Case 29 continues by explaining the creative beauty of a soul joining with a new human being. This coupling of intelligent life force before birth brings us full circle from the death scene described in Case 1. Dr. N. Well, I'm glad you arrived safe and sound in your new body. Tell me, how old is this baby? Subject, 5 months have passed since conception. Dr. N. Is this your usual arrival time as far as the maturation of a child? Subject, in my lives I have arrived at different times, depending on the baby, the mother, and my life to be. Dr. N. As a soul, are you in distress if the baby is aborted from the mother's womb for any reason before full term? Subject, we know if a baby is going to full term or not. Not being born comes as no surprise to us. We may be around to just comfort the child. Ha, how interesting, huh? Dr. N. Well, if the child does not go to term, is your life assignment as a soul aborted as well? Subject, no, there never was a full life assignment as far as that child was concerned. Dr. N. Might some babies who are aborted never have souls? Subject, that depends on how far along they are. The ones who die very early often don't need us. Note, this issue was as hotly debated in the past as it is today. Indeed. During the 13th century, the Christian Church found it necessary to establish guidelines for the existence of souls with regard to an aborted fetus. St. Thomas Aquinas and other medieval theologians arbitrarily decided ensoulment took place 40 days after conception. Dr. N. Assuming a baby is going to full term, do you know about the convergence habits of other souls with these children? Subject offhandedly. Oh, some float around more than others, going in and out of the baby until birth because they get bored. Dr. N. What do you usually do? Subject. I'm average, I guess. Actually, I don't spend a long time at any one stretch with babies because it can get pretty dull. Dr. N. All right, let's take this current situation inside your mother and allow some time to pass. What do you do when you are not within the unborn baby? Subject laughs with delight. You want the truth? I'll tell you. Me, I play. It's a fine time to leave and purely goof off when the baby is less active. I have fun with my friends who are doing the same thing. We bounce around Earth to visit with each other and go to interesting places where we have once lived together in former lives. That does sound like a lot of fun. Dr. N, do you and these other souls feel leaving the unborn baby for long periods is shirking your responsibilities of your assignment on Earth? Subject defensively. Oh, lighten up. Who said anything about long periods? I don't do that. Anyway, our tough exercises haven't begun yet. Dr. N, when you leave the baby for a while, what astral plane are you in relation to Earth? Subject. We are still on the Earth plane, and we try not to get too distracted either. A lot of our fooling around is in the neighborhood of the baby. I don't want you to get the idea that there is nothing for us to do with unborn babies. Dr. N. Oh? Subject continues, I'm busy with this new mind, even though it's not fully ready. Dr. N. Why don't we talk more about that? When your soul enters a baby to remain with this new body for a lifetime, give me the scope of this undertaking. Subject takes a deep sigh. Once I attach to a child, it is necessary to bring my mind into synchronization with the brain. We have to get used to each other as partners. Dr. N, this is what other people tell me, but do you and the baby have an affinity for each other right away? Subject, well, I am in the mind of the child, but separate too. I go slowly at first. Dr. N, okay, why don't you explain what you do with the mind of the baby? Subject, it's delicate and can't be hurried. I start with gentle probe, defining connections, gaps. Every mind is different. Dr. N, is there any conflict within the child against you? Softly, there is a slight resistance in the beginning, not full acceptance while I trace the passage. That's usual until there is familiarization. Stops for a moment and laughs quietly. I keep bumping into myself. Dr. N, as you integrate with the baby, when does it become receptive to the forces of your identity as a soul? Subject, I'm disturbed by your word force. We never force ourselves when entering an unborn baby. My tracing is done carefully. Dr. N, did it take you many lives to learn to trace a human brain? Subject, a while. New souls are assisted with their tracing. Dr. N, since you represent your pure energy, are you tracing electrical brain connections, such as neurotransmitters, nerve cells, and the like? Subject, pause. Well, something like that. I disrupt nothing, though I learn the brainwave patterns of the baby. And you remember what I was saying earlier? In science, they're kind of leaning towards the brain being more of a antenna, receiving and sending out messages, i.e., brainwaves, right, and other waves. I'm going to take a quick sip. Dr. N, are you referring to the thought regulation circuitry of the mind? Subject, how this person translates signals, its capacity. No two children are the same. Dr. N, be completely frank with me. Isn't your soul taking over this mind and subjugating it to your will? Subject, you don't understand. It's a melding. There is an emptiness before my arrival, which I fill to make the baby whole. Dr. N, do you bring intellect? Subject, we expand what is there. Dr. N, could you be more specific about what your soul actually provides the human body? Subject, we bring a compression of things, a recognition of the truth of what the brain sees. Dr. N, are you sure this child doesn't think of you first as an alien entity in her mind? Subject, no, that's why we unify with undeveloped minds. She recognizes me as a friend, a twin, who is going to be part of her. It's as if the baby was waiting for me to come. Dr. N, do you think a higher power prepares the baby for you? Subject, I don't know. It would seem so. Dr. N, is your work at unification completed before birth? Subject, not really, but at birth we have started to complement each other. Dr. N, so the unification process does take some time. Subject, sure, while we adjust to each other, and like I told you, I leave the unborn baby at intervals. Dr. N, but what about those souls who join babies at the last minute before birth? Subject, humph, that's their style, not mine. They have to start their work in the crib. Dr. N, how far along in an age is the body of the time your soul stops leaving the child altogether? Subject, at about 5 or 6 years of age. Interesting. Usually we get fully operational when the child starts school. Children under this age can be left to their own devices a lot. And it is true, even in science, A child's brainwave is at a certain frequency up until about 6 or 7, and then it changes and actually starts projecting. Whereas before, it's all absorption, which is why you always got to be careful around kids because they're literally making mental impressions of everything you do, how you react, and those things end up becoming the same exact reactions of yourself in later life, which is in psychology called behavioral psychology. But it's a very important part in the process of self realization and in meditation and things like that, and sort of looking within yourself to sort of help you figure out ways to live a better life and to deal with your problems. And I'll, I'll just continue with that. But that's a big part of it, because if people don't do that and they don't recognize like what are your real reactions versus the reactions that you learned as you were growing up, and then to sort of help yourself deprogram those things so that you have more control over yourself. Because that's one thing I notice. And you could do this with anybody. You go around, you know anybody, and you know their parents. You'll pick up those things very fast. So continuing, Dr. N, don't you have a duty to always be with your body? Subject, if things get bad in physical way, then I'm back inside like a shot. I'm back inside like a shot. Dr. N, how would you know if you were off fooling around with other souls? Subject, every brain has wave pattern. It's like a fingerprint. We know immediately if a baby assigned to us is in trouble. Dr. N, so you were watching the baby assigned to you all the time, both inside and out during the early stages of growth? Subject with pride, oh yes, and I watched the parents. They might be having squabbles around the baby, which sets up disturbing vibrations. What was I just saying? It's Dr. N. And if this happens to the child, what do you do? What do you do as its soul? Subject, quiet the child the best I can. Reach out to the parents through the baby to calm them. With screaming, I'm sure. Dr. N, give me an example of how you reach out to the parents. Subject, oh, make the baby laugh in front of them by poking my parents' faces with both hands. This sort of thing further endears babies to parents. This is true. Dr. N, as a soul, you can control motor movements of the baby. Subject, it's me. I can push a little on that part of the brain which controls movements. I can tickle the kid's funny bone sometimes too. I'll do whatever it takes to bring harmony to my assigned family. Dr. N, tell me what it is like being inside a mother's womb. Subject, I like the warm, comfortable feeling of love. Most of the time there is love. Sometimes there is stress. Anyway, I use this time to think and plan what I'm going to do after birth. I think about my past lives and missed opportunities with other bodies, and this gives me incentive. Dr. N, and you haven't yet had the memories of all your past lives and your life in the spirit world blocked out by amnesia? Subject, that starts after birth. Dr. N, when the baby is born, does it have any conscious thought of who its soul is and the reasons for the attachment? Subject, pause. The child mind is so undeveloped it does not reason out of this information. It does have parts of this knowledge as a means of comfort, which then fades. By the time I speak, this information is locked deep inside me, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Dr. N. So, will you have fleeting thoughts of other lives as a child? Subject. Yes, we daydream the way we play as children, creating stories, having imaginary friends who are real, but it fades. In the first few years of life, babies know more than they are given credit for. And this is another interesting aspect, guys, because in Buddhism, all right, this is a fact. In Buddhism, when they go out and find their various rinpoches and lamas and things like that, there's a whole system about trying to find the child, the child, the reincarnated child, while it's still young, because they realize this fact. And there's a whole system that you use to suss out whether or not that person is the reincarnation of the lama or the rinpoche or whatever. Systems where they bring up different items, all kinds of different stuff. If you guys ever saw the movie Kundun by Scorsese, believe it or not, that's the story of the Dalai Lama when he was born and then when he had to leave. But the scenes of when he was born and when they had to find him are fascinating, and gives you a little clue on how the Buddhists do that kind of thing. So continuing. Dr. N, all right, now it is the time right before your birth in this life. Tell me what you're doing. Subject, I'm listening to music. Dr. N, what music? Subject, I'm listening to my father play records. Very relaxing for him. It helps him to think. I'm a bit anxious for him. Dr. N, why? Subject giggles. He thinks he wants a boy, but I'll change his mind in a hurry. Dr. N. So this is a productive time for you? Subject with determination. Yes, I'm busy planning for the approaching time when I will enter the world as a human and take the first breath. This is my last chance for quiet contemplation of the next life. When I come out, I'll be running. Conclusion. The information contained in this book about the existence of souls after physical death represents the most meaningful explanation I have found in my life as to why we are here. All my years searching to discover the purpose of life hardly prepared me for that moment when a subject in hypnosis finally opened the door to an eternal world. My oldest friend is a Catholic priest today. As boys, we walked together in the hills and among the beaches of Los Angeles. We had many philosophical discussions, but were miles apart in our spiritual beliefs. He once told me, quote, "I think it must take courage for you to be an atheist and believe in nothing beyond this life," unquote. I didn't see it that way at the time, nor for many years afterwards. Starting at age 5, I had been sent by my parents to military-type boarding schools for long periods. The feelings of abandonment and loneliness were so great I believed in no higher power than myself. I now realize strength was given to me in subtle ways I was unable to see. My friend and I still have different approaches to spirituality, but we both have convictions today that order and purpose in the universe emanate from a higher consciousness. Looking back, I suppose it was no accident in my own life that people would eventually come to me for hypnosis, a medium of truth I could believe in, to tell me about guides, heavenly gateways, spiritual study groups, and creation itself in a world of souls. Even now, I sometimes feel like an intruder in the minds of those who describe the spirit world and their place in it, but their knowledge has given me direction. Still, I wonder why I am the messenger for the spiritual knowledge contained in this book, when someone with less original cynicism and doubt would have surely been much better suited. Actually, it is the people represented in these cases who are the real messengers of hope for the future, not the reporter. Everything I have learned about who we are and where we come from, I owe to those who are drawn to me for help. They have taught me that a major aspect of our mission on earth as souls is to mentally survive being cut off from our real home. While in a human body, the soul is essentially alone. A soul's relative isolation on earth during a temporary physical life is made more difficult on a conscious level by thoughts that nothing exists beyond this life. Yeah, and those thoughts right there are the ones that are being have been hammered into our consciousness, guys, for, I don't know, at least a couple of hundred years, since the 1800s, since the Rockefeller-controlled education system took its root. And look at what society is today. Look at the secularized society. I mean, I'm not saying the religious institutions did a much better job, but at least there was something to fall back on. But uh, this whole society that's just based off of just materialistic lifestyle is the absolute opposite to what this book has been telling us, right? And what I've been saying in my channel since I started this channel. One of the very important things I want to be able to get people to pay attention to for their own benefit, continuing with the conclusion, our doubts tempt us into finding attachments solely in the physical world we can see. Exactly what I'm saying. Scientific knowledge that Earth is only a grain of sand on the edge of a galactic shoreline within a vast sea of the universe adds to our feelings of insignificance. Why is no other living thing on Earth concerned with life after death? Is this simply because our inflated egos hate to think of life as only temporary, or is it because our being is associated with a higher power? People argue that any thoughts of a hereafter are wishful thinking. I used to do so myself. However, there is logic to the concept that we are not created by accident for mere survival, and that we do operate within a universal system which directs the physical transformation of self for a reason. I believe it is the voice of our souls which tell us we do have personhood that is not intended to die. All the accounts of life after death in my case files have no scientific foundation to prove the statements of these subjects. To these readers who find the material book offered in this book too unprecedented to accept, I would hope for one thing. If you carry away nothing except the idea you may have a permanent identity worth finding, I will have accomplished a great deal. I respect him greatly for saying that. One of the most troublesome concerns of all people who want to believe in something higher than themselves is the causality of so much negativity in the world. Evil is given as primary example. When I ask my subjects how a loving God could permit suffering, surprisingly there are few variations in their responses. My cases report our souls are born of a creator, which places a totally peaceful state deliberately out of reach, so we will strive harder. We learn from wrongdoing. The absence of good traits exposes the ultimate flaws in our nature, in our nature. That which is not good is testing us. Otherwise, we would have no motivation to better the world through ourselves and no way to measure advancement. And also, I would add, no way to understand the perfection of God, right? You have to work your stuff out. Continuing, when I ask my subjects about the alternating merciful and wrathful qualities we perceive to be the self expression of a teacher oversoul, some of them say the Creator only shows certain attributes to us for specific ends. For instance, if we equate evil with justice and mercy with goodness, and if God allows us only to know mercy, then there would be no state of justice. This book represents a theme of order and wisdom rising from many spiritual energy levels. In a remarkable underlying message, particularly from advanced subjects, the possibility is held out that the God oversoul of our universe is on a less than perfect level. Thus, complete infallibility is deferred to an even higher divine source. Wow. Okay, so yeah, that's fascinating because this statement here is the crux of what the spiritual book, A Course in Miracles, is all about. It's basically saying that our soul, this divine thing we're connected to, is not the actual God, but that God exists even outside of that. And just like Origen, famous church father, and someone I quoted in the video I did of reincarnation in Christianity, he believes that. And his whole theory was that we are part of a divine soul that became distracted from God's omnipresence, and in that distraction, then it split everything, and then became the universe. So this sentence here that he says, particularly from the advanced subjects, the possibilities held out the God oversoul of our universe is on a less than perfect level. Thus, complete infallibility is deferred to an even higher divine source. That's an interesting connection. I just wanted to stop and point that out. And it's also something very associated with the way the creation of the universe with Shiva is also described, which we will go into very soon. Continuing, from my work, I have come to believe that we live in an imperfect world by design. Earth is one of countless worlds with intelligent beings, each with its own set of imperfections. To bring into harmony, extending this thought further, we must exist as one single-dimensional universe out of many, each having its own creator governing at a different level of proficiency and levels similar to the progression of souls seen in this book. Under this pantheon, the divine being of our particular house would be allowed to govern his, her, or its own way. If the souls who go to planets in our universe are offspring of a parental oversoul who is made wiser by our struggle, then could we have a more divine grandparent who is an absolute God? The concept that our immediate God is still evolving as we are taking nothing away from an ultimate source of perfection who spawned our God. To my mind, a supreme perfect God would not lose omnipotence or total control over all creation by allowing for the maturation of less than perfect superior offspring. These lesser gods could be allowed to create their own imperfect worlds as a final means of edification so they might join with the ultimate creator, ultimate God. The reflected aspects of divine intervention in this universe must remain as our ultimate reality. If our God is not the best there is because of the use of pain as a teaching tool, then we must accept that this is the best we have and still take the reasons for our existence as a divine gift. Certainly, this idea is not easy to convey to someone who is physically suffering. For example, from a terminal illness, pain in life is especially insidious, because it can block the healing power of our souls, especially if we have not accepted what is happening to us as a preordained trial. Yet throughout life, our karma is designed so that each trial will not be too great for us to endure. At a Wat temple in the mountains of northern Thailand, a Buddhist teacher once reminded me of a simple truth. Life, quote unquote, he said, quote, is offered as a means of self-expression, only giving us what we seek when we listen to the heart, unquote. The highest forms of this expression are acts of kindness. Our soul may be traveling away from permanent home, but we are not just tourists. We bear responsibilities in the evolution of a higher consciousness for ourselves and others in life. Thus, our journey is a collective one, which I would agree with, and it's a very important thing to keep in one's mind. We are divine but imperfect beings who exist in two worlds, material and spiritual. It is our destiny to shuttle back and forth between their universes through space and time while we learn to master ourselves and acquire knowledge. We must trust in this process with patience and determination. Our essence is not fully knowable in most physical hosts, but self is never lost because we always remain connected to both worlds. A number of my more advanced subjects have stated there is growing movement in the spirit world to, quote, change the game rules on Earth, unquote. These people say their souls had less amnesia about self and the interlife uh, when they lived in earlier cultures. It seemed in the last few thousand years there has been a tighter blocking on a conscious level of our immortal memories. I'll have something to say about that once we're done here. This has been a contributing factor in the loss of faith in our capacity for self transcendence. Earth is filled with people who feel an empty hopelessness toward the meaning of life. The lack of connection with our immortality, combined with the availability of mind altering chemicals in the overpopulation, has created rumbles upstairs. I am told large numbers of souls who have had more frequent incarnations in recent centuries on Earth are opting, when they get the chance, for less stressful worlds. There are enlightened places where amnesia is greatly reduced without causing homesickness for the spirit world. As we approach this next millennium, which of course we're already in, the masters who directed Earth's destiny appear to be making changes to permit more information and understanding of who we are and why we are here to come into our lives. Perhaps the most gratifying feature of my work is uncovering the existence of a spirit world in the minds of my subjects is the effect this conscious knowledge has on them. The most significant benefit which comes from knowing we have a home of everlasting love waiting for us is being receptive to the higher spiritual power within our minds. The awareness that we do belong somewhere is reassuring and offers us peace, not merely as a haven from conflict, but to unify ourselves with the universal mind. One day we are going to finish this long journey, all of us, and reach an ultimate state of enlightenment where everything is possible. There you guys go. That is Journey of Souls for you. But I did want to come back real quick and just make a quick comment. And this is extremely, I totally forgot about this. And I never would have caught this had I not delved deep into the various Hindu religions, because there's such a mixture of them. But one of the things that in the Vedas and in India, they have what's called the yugas. And yugas are like, there are 4 yugas to each age. If I'm not mistaken, each age in the Indian part is 24,000 years. So it's broken up by 7, or I think it's 24. It's one of those. But either way, there are 4 different yugas, and there's Kali Yuga, Dwapara Yuga. I forget the other 2. But I'm going to be doing a video on this exact specific thing about the yugas themselves. But one of the things that he says here, which really just struck me, is that within these ages, they descend and they ascend. Okay, so we are actually coming out. We just came out of what is called the ascending Kali Yuga, but when Kali Yuga descends, when it starts in the age of Kali Yuga descending, that's when you start to see in society within the yogi culture, the yogic culture, or in India, that's when you start to see ignorance become like he's just saying here. It seems that the last few thousand years there has been tighter blocking on a conscious level for our immortal memories. This is what happens. There is a dumbing down of like an age of ignorance, and so when we get into the yugas, we'll get into more detail. But there's like 100 or so years that is sort of like a transition period between the yugas, and then it starts to go into it, and that's when things get crazy. And in Kali Yuga, Kali is the female goddess opposite of Shiva. And Kali is meant to represent like the physicality of the planet and the Earth. And so Kali is actually very much usually uh, worshipped at a tree. And that's one thing that we're going to see is going to be a connecting point that goes all the way across the whole Levant area. And I mean, there'll be some connections here, but this is important. So this whole thing with Kali Yuga is that it's meant to be like the Kali Yuga is more meant to be more materialism, right? Because she is more of like the earth goddess, that kind of thing. Always represented as like this big demon who's sort of swallowing up everything, just like Kronos is also, in the same exact way represented as swallowing his children. It's just because he's represented as time. And so we have now time and Kali, and so this whole thing with where these souls are talking about that happening in a couple thousand years. When we do this video, I'll remind you guys about this because this is important because that's exactly what's happening. And one of the things about Dwapara Yuga is that there is an interconnectivity of more people who are across the board can talk to each other. So, i.e., the internet, telephone, technology, things like that. And there's various elements to each of these yugas, which kind of tell you that you're sort of in one or not, or transitioning. So we'll be doing a video on that very soon, actually, because that's actually gonna play a lot about what we're gonna be talking about. Because there is a reason why a lot of this knowledge kind of fell into obscurity for thousands of years and then started to pop back up again during the 1500s. There is a reason why there had to have been secret societies that kind of held some secret knowledge for so much time because during Kali Yuga, those are the ages of conquests and control. And that's when you have these empires and it's just so much of the nastiest stuff that's happened in the last 2 or 3 thousand years is a great example of the way Kali Yuga is. And I have a book which I've read part of. It's in French, but it's letters between Voltaire and this other guy named Bailey or Bailly, and they're talking about astronomy, and they're also talking about Atlantis, a different book. It's a book of letters published between the two. But Voltaire says something very interesting. He says not that long ago that the world was a much more peaceful place. And I always wondered what he really meant. But one of the things Voltaire is within these letters, he's extremely aware of the religions of India, because in their arguments and in their letters, they definitely mention the Brahmins, and that's something that's very interesting to kind of point out with the way that whole thing kind of is connected. Because again, like the connection with India is one of those things, or even the connection with Egypt, which I'm going to show as well. This idea of yoga and this whole idea of turning yourself inward is extremely ancient. Just like I showed in that first video, the introduction of the snake and the eagle. If you guys haven't watched that, go back and check it out because this video was a good stepping stone to all of that stuff. But the introduction is going to be good because it'll show you some of the religious type of things that existed around the world associated with this much older understanding of what spirituality is. Before the dark times, before Kali Yuga came around, and then the priest class and the nobility and the bloodlines and all that stuff became the name of the game. Instead of people living free, spiritually free, and understanding what they need to do. And so one of the reasons I also wanted to read this book is because as we go along in our historical researches, we are going to find the fact that there are many, many, many civilizations that, especially with some of these Romans, they'll talk about how, for instance, the Gauls or the Celts were actually very fierce warriors. It's the same thing when they came into England and they tried to take over England. They can only go so far. And part of the reason why they were so fierce is because they believed in the immortality of the soul. They understood that there was a thing called reincarnation. They understood intrinsically that courage and fortitude and the fact that these things in life happen and one has to rise up just exactly the way and it is written in the Bhagavad Gita. And again, if I did an audiobook of that, those of you who haven't listened to that, please listen to it or read it yourself. It's such it's this book, these books and these themes, these are connecting. These are the reasons why I put out these dots for you guys, and I will tell you what I think, but I want you, and it will always be up to you as a person to connect them yourself. I will do the best I can at making good presentations, but then some things like this are worth doing full audiobooks on because there's a lot of context, there's a lot of things to learn, there's a lot of things to understand, and that's one of the big problems I find in YouTube is that there's a lot of people who do a great job at showing different things, but then a lot of that stuff goes dry because there's not that much to show anymore. There's a lot more to it. There's where we got to delve into the books, and so I really appreciate you guys joining me on these streams and all that stuff. But all of you who are listening to afterwards, thank you so much for listening. Subscribe if you enjoy my content. Like the video if you enjoyed the video. And share this with people who you think may be ready to listen to this kind of thing. Not everybody will, and that's okay. And that's something that you have to be okay with as well. I always, I wanted to help so many people early on, and then I pushed too hard. And I learned the hard way that, you know what? It's about love, and not just about love, but it's about you're working on yourself. The further you get on your own self realization, the more you will affect people in your life because they will see the changes. They will hear the changes. They will experience the changes because they will exude out of you. The further along you get, the more that you will change. And, so let's do our best at trying to live the best kind of life we can. And maybe let's try to pay attention to these signposts and these flags and a lot of little clues that we got from this great book that Dr. Michael Newton wrote. And his second book is called Destiny of Souls, if you guys want to check that out. I may not do a full reading of that one, although I think I might do a couple of chapters here and there that I think are worth sort of exploring. Otherwise, thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you guys in another video in a couple of days. Peace and love to all of you.